Common Man for Ukraine aid group join us. They're just back from yet another humanitarian mission to the war-torn country. Plus, a classic BPR tradition, Am I the A-hole Day? We're going to open the phone and text lines to ask you who's in the wrong when co-workers won't stop interrogating each other about the details of what they're eating for lunch. It's all ahead on BPR.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump says the U.S. will bomb all of Iran's electrical plants and send Iran back to the Stone Age in the next 2 to 3 weeks. That's if a deal is not reached. NPR's Aya Batrawi reports on reactions from Iran to President Trump's national address last night.
Iran's aerospace commander, Sayed Majid Mousavi, said threats to blow Iran back to the Stone Age are Hollywood delusions. The Revolutionary Guard commander said in a post online, the U.S.'s 250-year history is paltry next to Iran's thousands-year-old civilization. Iran's foreign ministry said Iran will continue fighting as long as it's attacked and will not tolerate a cycle of more negotiations followed by war. The foreign ministry said after Trump's speech, in which he called Iran the world's top sponsor of terror, that Israel's the one facing charges of genocide in Gaza, which Israel denies. Meanwhile, Iran says a key bridge connecting the city of Karaj to Tehran was bombed, and a 100-year-old medical research center in the capital was damaged. Earlier, a company manufacturing medicine for treating cancer was destroyed. Aya Batrawi, NPR News, Dubai.
Iran continues to choke off oil shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. In his address, President Trump also said forcing Iran to release control of that waterway is not the U.S.'s problem. The British government has convened a multinational virtual meeting today. British Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper says Iran is to blame for cutting off energy supplies.
That Iranian recklessness towards countries who were never involved in this conflict, which we and 130 countries across the world have strongly condemned at the United Nations, is not just hitting mortgage rates and petrol prices and the cost of living here in the UK and in many different countries across the world. It is hitting our global economic security.
French President Emmanuel Macron says using military force to reopen the strait is, quote, unrealistic. Americans are feeling pessimistic about their retirement savings. A new survey from Northwestern Mutual found 46% of respondents believe they will not be ready for retirement. NPR Stephen Bisaha has more.
Americans typically think they'll need close to $1.5 million to retire comfortably. John Roberts is Northwestern Mutual's chief field officer, and he says 48% think it's likely they'll outlive their savings.
That's kind of wild. Almost half of all the respondents say, I don't think I'm going to be prepared for retirement when the time comes. And then almost half say, and I don't think I'm going to have enough for as long as I expect I'm going to live in retirement.
Respondents also worry whether Social Security will still be there when it's their turn to retire. Projections from the Congressional Budget Office indicate as of now, Social Security's trust fund for benefits may run out in 2032. Stephen Bisaha, NPR News.
On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrials are down about 90 points. You're listening to NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. A Massachusetts man has been arrested and charged with posting death threats against President Donald Trump on Facebook. Norwood Patch reports 45-year-old Andrew Emerald of Great Barrington was arrested and indicted yesterday by a federal grand jury on charges of interstate transmission of threatening communications. U.S. Attorney's Office says Emerald made 8 threatening posts against President Trump over the course of 2 months from May through July of last year. The posts include such language as, quote, taking out the orange menace, and either Trump is dead and in the ground by 2026 or I am hunting him down and putting them there, unquote. Those are the more mild of the posts. Others are way too vulgar to mention here in the radio. Emerald faces up to 5 years in prison and a fine of $250,000. Expats living in the Boston area say FIFA taking advantage of people's passion for the game with sky-high ticket prices. The latest batch of tickets released yesterday saw another increase for World Cup games, with 40 of the 104 games being boosted, according to NPR. John O'Hara lives in Boston. He's been pricing games since the first batch of tickets were available.
None of this is to do with the football. It's all about money making. So, I mean, we're all huge football or soccer fans that are dying to go to games, and you've got to throw everything on a credit card just to go and see your national team play a game of football. You know, you're talking mortgage payments to go and watch a game of soccer. It's absolutely crazy.
More tickets are expected to be released gradually. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Imaginable Futures, funding programs in the U.S. with the goal of ensuring young children and their parents get the education they need to thrive. Learn more at imaginablefutures.com. This is NPR.
Houston Brady. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We are back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. We're going to have live music from the former poet laureate of the United States, Robert Pinsky. That's going to be great.
I bumped into him on the street the other day. Yesterday, actually.
He said he looks like $1 million.
He looks fabulous, yeah.
And for our press play segment, this is a real treat. We're going to be joined by the former editor of the New York Times, Jill Abramson. And one other programming note, Mayor Michelle Wu is going to be with us from 12 to 1 on April 28th at the Boston Public Library, taking our questions and yours. Good morning, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. So last night in that primetime address to the nation, Trump simultaneously said we are close to ending the war in Iran due to our military prowess, but also that it is imperative that we continue and amplify our aggression. Here's a little piece of what he said.
We're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2 to 3 weeks. We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong.
In order to achieve those goals, one might imagine we would carpet bomb the country, which, by the way, is a war crime. We already have a school bombing notched in our war belt, more than 100 children dead. You just heard on the national news that one of the oldest cancer research facilities, that was dramatically damaged by United States weaponry. What more could we achieve by sending Iran back to the Stone Ages? So far, the war has weakened our strongest alliances, crippled the global economy, destabilized much of the Middle East. Did the president clarify anything last night for you? And what is the point of this expensive, deadly, destabilizing war? The lines are open, 877-301-8970. Reflections on Trump's, I would say, useless, clueless, feckless, empathy-free speech. Bill Kristol, former chief of staff to Dick Cheney, called it a nothing burger, which I think is true. And by the way, if you agree with, I think that's Marjorie's analysis too, what do you think Trump thought he was achieving last night with his speech at 877-301-8970? Before you say what you thought about it, what do you think his goal was before he spoke for 19 minutes?
I think he has a lot of confidence in himself, and he thinks that people will believe him when he lies, and people do believe him when he lies.
What did he say? Even if you believed all the lies, what did he say that was going to cause more people to worry less about gas in their 401ks and to be more supportive of a war that the majority of the American people don't support?
That he has assured Americans that our children and our grandchildren will not have to worry about Iran anymore because they've blasted them to the Stone Age, or they're going to blast them more to the Stone Age.
But the primary goal was that they have no nuclear capacity. Last night he basically said, "Don't worry about that anemore." Okay, no. Isn't that what he said?
Well, he said, "Don't worry about the nukes. It's a bunch of rubble. Don't worry about the Strait of Hormuz."
Let's get that. Here's what he said about the Strait of Hormuz. It would just open up naturally. I don't even know what that means through, I guess, our allies' involvement. Here he is.
Iran has been essentially decimated. The hard part is done, so it should be easy. And in any event, when this conflict is over, the Strait will open up naturally.
Okay.
It'll just open up naturally.
For you wordsmiths out there, what does that mean? What does that even mean?
I don't know.
I don't know. I have to say,
additives and preservatives when the Strait opens up, I guess.
This is not my usual blanket criticism of Trump. I mean, I listened to this carefully. I wanted to hear that it was going to be over. I wanted to hear what he thought he had achieved. It was a sort of half-assed, rushed thing. And you know what's incredible to me? It's not incredible anymore. While he did say gas prices are going to come down, relatively quickly, I'm not sure that's true at all, but let's assume whether it is or not is secondary. He has total inability, even if he's not going to blame himself, even to say the words, "I know a lot of you are suffering economically, financially, because of the rising price of fuel. He can't even get words out to show that he pretends to care about the economic or other pain of any human beings. He did talk about the 13 service members who were died and having gone to greet their return to this country.
Some of the British papers have been really tough on him. Of course, he's been tough on Starmer, the prime minister over there. But talking about, I didn't notice that he was slurring his words. They're talking about how he's
rushing
pronounce
through
the word
everything.
enemies, couldn't pronounce different words. He seemed to be tired. I didn't really notice that, but the Brits were after him today.
I'm serious, by the way.
British tabloids.
I have no idea what he thought he was achieving by that speech last night. And, didn't give people hope. Well, he said, several weeks, 2-3 weeks.
The regime has
He
changed,
didn't really
Jim.
say that.
He said there was never a goal. It was never a goal to change the regime, even though I thought it was a goal to change the regime. But in any case, it's happened, even though it wasn't a goal. It's happened anyway, even though it hasn't happened. I mean, he just, the Strait is no problem, even though the oil market is global and prices will be impacted, even if it. And just the idea it's going to be easy to go in there.
Was easy.
It's going to be easy. Yeah. Well, it's going to be easy for to open.
Naturally. Naturally.
We'll open naturally. Or meantime, the other people, like the Europeans, should go in there, or the Japanese should go in there. Anybody but the United States.
Anybody
should
go in there naturally and just naturally end this thing.
I don't know.
Okay.
It's
in any
very
case,
nerve-wracking.
if we're not attempting to deter those who think there was a point and something was gained, let me put it another way. Do you learn
There's
anything?
no inflation. He said
even
that
if
too.
you are supportive of what Trump is doing in Iran, did you learn anything that you didn't know before Trump spoke last night at 9 o'clock? Can I say one thing
poor
positive?
Iranian people.
Forget it. For 1 second,
What?
I watched the whole takeoff, the blast off.
Oh,
and even
that
though
was
you and I
great.
were tepid,
It was
we
great.
kept talking.
I was wrong.
I was
wrong.
really
I
thrilling.
was totally, absolutely wrong.
You're not totally wrong because there's a lot of money.
I was saying, okay, we're going to the moon. I wasn't that excited about it. But then I saw the astronauts come out. It was a DEI astronaut group.
I know.
Did you read it? A black guy, a woman. I mean, this is...
Marjorie said before the show
it's
she couldn't
amazing.
believe Trump didn't cancel the flight because a black guy and a woman on it.
Exactly.
Had he known.
Well, it did have two white guys, so they outnumbered.
No, but one's Canadian. That's even worse.
That's a great point. One of the Canadians. How
From
did
the
he slip in?
51st state. A guy from the 51st state, a black guy, and a woman.
Yeah, it's an outrage. He must have been too busy with the war to notice that. Otherwise, they would
One
never.
last question before we take calls.
What?
This is for you directly.
Yes.
Which were you more excited about? Yesterday afternoon at about 6:40 when the thing blasted off, or when I brought in the new refrigerator this morning? Which was more exciting?
We do have a new refrigerator.
It's a little tiny one,
Cone
but
of
it's
silence
excellent.
in the hallway.
Oh,
I really do
good.
like it. But I must admit, I got caught up in
So did
watching
I.
the people down there. Oh, you know what, though, I'm afraid? It used to be Cape Canaveral. What is it now?
I don't know, Cape, I don't know.
Kennedy Center.
Oh, it's back to Cape Kennedy?
Yeah. I mean, do you think the name change is coming anytime soon?
Well, that's a very. If he knew it was Cape Kennedy, it'd probably be Cape Trump or Cape Don. In any case,
Whatever
we
it
want
is,
your
Kennedy-
calls,
the Kennedy-
not about the blast off and not about our new refrigerator, but about Trump's speech last night. What you
But you know what's
think of
great
it and
about-
what you build. We also like your insight. We're going to ask Chuck Todd in a bit too. What you think he thought. Put
Hold
yourself
on.
in his place. What do you think he thought he achieved?
Just one thing.
Yeah.
The reason I was so into the blast off is because you looked at these great astronauts. You looked at the power of that rocket going up, and it was NASA, and we did it, and it's great in a time when you feel like we can't
do anything.
It's wonderful to see that we
That's a
can
good
still
point.
do that, and it was great to watch. Anyway, 877-301-8970. John from Gardner, thank you for calling.
Hey, John.
Hey, good morning, folks. Thank you for taking the call.
Of course.
He didn't clarify a damn thing, and as
Nothing.
a lot of people said last night, this was a speech he should have made prepping the nation for the war. But if you don't mind, can I mention what I think is a lack of the good Democratic communication?
Sure.
I haven't seen one person stand up and say something to the effect that, listen, Iran is a nuclear threat. They support terrorism, all that stuff. So and stand there, there's a good case to be made that we had to do something with Iran. But other than Israel, he went without any allies.
Well, wait, let me stop you. I heard a ton of Democrats say that, but what they also went on to say, I think almost without exception, maybe with the exception of John Fetterman from Pennsylvania, is there was no imminent threat. There are a lot of, you should listen more carefully, John. I know you're a good consumer of the news.
Well,
I think a lot of Democrats said, of course they of course can't have a nuclear weapon. But at the same time, he basically said last night, don't worry about it. It's so deeply, we've bombed it so underground. We're going to have these, what do they call them? Satellites go overhead
going to watch
and monitor
and
this
get anywhere
thing.
near it could be under the dust and the rubble. Yeah. But you had one more complaint, John. What was the second one?
Well, my point is, acknowledge that the military's been fantastic, okay, and they've blown a lot of stuff up. But strategically, to go into something like this without planning about the Hormuz Strait, for example, is ridiculous. They just, I don't think, communicate enough about the reason for going. I agree with you. They have talked about that.
Hegseth's not going to be happy with you, John. When you say he didn't care about anticipate the Strait of Hormuz, that's not good.
Oh, my God.
John, it's always great to talk to you. I
didn't make my point too well, but thank you.
No, you did. You're terrific, John. We love you. We always have. Thanks, John. John, by the way, we have been communicated with and met. We have communicated with John for
he's a great golfer.
The whole time we've been on the air at both places. 877-301-8970. You know what he also said about 20 times last night? I shouldn't laugh about any of this thing. Every single thing was, no one's ever seen anything like it before. Doesn't matter what it is. Never seen anything like it before.
Well, I love it. Here's another one of his great lines that until he came back for round number 2, we were dead in crippled country. We were dead in crippled country.
We're the hottest country on earth right now.
Now we're the hottest country on earth. We have no inflation.
We are the hottest country on earth, by the way. That part is true, but that's not what he was talking about.
Let's go to John in Westford. Hi, John.
Hey, John. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
Sure.
I think the goal of the war is regime change. And the more that Trump says, and he said it right from the beginning, it's not about regime change. It's not about it's just showing that it is. And I'm fine with that. And the fact that 30,000 Persians were killed, that just shows you that Mossad had or has boots on the ground. It's known that the whole place is Mossad. They're organizing and setting up a puppet government.
John, if I may, that's exactly what Israel says about the massive killings they've done in Gaza. Do you buy that out of Israel? And if you don't, why do you buy it out of the United States now?
No, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying that it's not about regime change. It's like a double negative. But he keeps saying it's not about regime change. Trump is about regime change in Gaza. He wants to set up to have like UAE and Jordan have a temporary government set up. So it is a two-state solution, which I don't think Israel.
But he's
really
not
about.
But he's not about regime change in Venezuela because it's the exact same regime. But he says they're friends of ours. So I mean, you give him a little more credit, John, than we do. But we appreciate your thoughts. Thank you much for the call as always. 877-301-8970.
He also said again last night that he always says there's been $8 trillion worth of investment in the United States of America during his
18, not 8. 18 trillion.
And even the White House's own website says it's 10 trillion, but most people think it's more like 5 trillion. But he keeps repeating that one too.
By the way, Marjorie's hiccuping, so let me take over here. Anonymous text, does Jim have a lock on his new refrigerator? I can answer that directly. Not yet. 877-3... by the way, it's our refrigerator. It's not my refrigerator.
Yeah.
877-301-8970.
A new refrigerator.
No, it really does lift your spirits.
And I also got a little portable wastebasket for my car. I tell you, I feel like I'm a new woman.
That's incredible.
I'm really
you did that by yourself?
Today. I ordered it. Yes, I did.
That's great.
I ordered it from Amazon, which I shouldn't do.
Right.
But I did.
Okay, Rob in Cambridge, what's up? Hey, Rob.
Hey, yeah, guys.
Hi.
Hey, can you hear me?
We can, perfectly. What's up?
Yeah, the only reason Trump threw that press conference last night is because he was jealous that the spotlight was taken away from him. A different shade of orange was getting the attention.
That's a good one. That is a
March Madness was a little bit too much competition for him.
No, but serious, that's a good line, John. Do you have any insight? Well, not any insight, any speculation as to what he thought he was achieving last night?
I don't think he thinks about those types of things. I think he just tries to get in front of the camera as much as he can. Doesn't even matter what comes out of his mouth.
Well, unfortunately, that may be accurate. Rob, thank you for the call.
Here's a good one. Trump is a salesman. The point was just to keep selling. No one is buying what he's selling on Iran, but that doesn't stop a salesman. That's from Peter and Mystic.
But I don't even think it was an enthusiastic sell. I mean, even if I don't like the message, it wasn't a powerful sell.
I think people just convinced him around him, and he had to get out and say something. And we're going to talk to Chuck Todd in a bit. I'd be interested to see what he thinks after the speech, but I know that before the speech, he thought this was leading up to an escalation. So I don't know.
Well, there's a lot of speculation, by the way, that this is one of his brilliant negotiating things, because he didn't mention ground troops, that he's going to do ground troops over the weekend to celebrate Easter. So I don't know.
Did you read Rick and Hingham?
No, go right ahead.
The Strait of Hormuz will open naturally, just like COVID would disappear naturally during his first administration.
You know, by the way, I was watching half-assed. I heard it when he said naturally. Mm-hmm. Did he say it as an ad lib, or if it was in the script?
Know.
What does naturally mean? What does it even mean?
I don't know,
well,
but one of the fears is that what the Iranians are going to charge billions and billions of dollars to boats going through the Strait of Hormuz, which will
dwarf
them.
the $1.7 billion he has mentioned 10,000 times.
Oh, yeah.
That,
and that's
Obama.
another thing. That was a deal where when they were negotiating to be able to inspect the nuclear weaponry over in Iran, Iran had bought $400 million worth of military weapons from the United States, but then they never got it because of the Shah deposition being deposed and all that back in the 70s. So the $4 million plus the interest is what was negotiated. That's what Obama gave him back during the negotiations.
And also another question for you: when he emphasizes the Hussein and Barack Hussein Obama, he's really cleverly suggesting once again that Obama was an enemy of the people, or
so.
What? I mean, really, what is the?
Well, he really can't stand Obama.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Okay, 877-301-8970. Let's go to Roy in Waltham. Thank you for calling.
It's not Waltham, but it's okay. Hello, Roy. Nice.
Wyndham, I'm sorry. Wyndham.
Hi.
Nope, you're close. It's Wenham.
Oh, whoops. Sorry, Roy.
Trust me, Roy. That's about as close as we ever get.
Okay,
so
sure
take
it's
it
not
away.
Weymouth.
We're glad to have you no matter where you're from. Go ahead.
I watched a few minutes last night till I got kind of really sick. But one of the things that stood out was he talked briefly about the 13 servicemen that were killed.
Yes.
And how he went to see them come by, the caskets, and I went and did this. And then he made this point. He said, in every single family, and then he was like, every single one told me, sir, finish the job. What a crock.
Well, there was also a story last week. Could one of you guys try to pull this quickly if you can? I'm sorry. There was a story last week where the father of one of the servicemen or women who were killed said that, responded to that and said, in fact, that was not at all a message that came from our family. We'll try to get that before this segment is over.
You know what's interesting, Roy, too? Every time someone speaks to the president, Sir, you look spectacular today. Sir, love the red tie.
That's how you know he's lying.
Roy, good one. Thank you for the call. Appreciate it. That is true. He always says when someone's addressing him, he uses the expression "sir" as to what they. Well,
that's part of what some of the speculation is too. That he wanted to reassure the country that he's in charge, he's all powerful, and knows exactly what he's doing, and this is all going to turn out great. Even though, as we know, at the beginning of this war, the Strait of Hormuz was open, and the nuclear weaponry potential is the exact same way now as it was before the war.
What does he say? I pay attention pretty well, I think. When he is asked, which I assume he is, those press availabilities in the Oval Office, you said you obliterated their nuclear capacity last year. It's only X months later. Why do we need to re-obliterate it? What is his answer? What is his answer?
I don't think he gets asked those questions. I mean, we're going to talk later about Tulsi Gabbard, national intelligence, being in trouble. And one of the reasons she's in trouble is because she didn't slam Joe Kent, the guy who just resigned from Trump's circle, because he disagreed with the claim of the president that we were in imminent danger from Iraq. That's all it takes is one disagreement with him, and you're out the door.
By the way, here's just one family. This is when Trump was at Dover Air Force Base. Charles Simmons, thank you to our colleagues. His His 28-year-old son, Tech Sergeant Tyler Simmons, was one of the people killed in that refueling plane crash. He says, I can't speak for the other families as the father. When he spoke to me, that was not something we talked about. By the way, I saw the father on CNN. He was just talking about his kid was so moving and beautiful. It was really
well. I mean,
heartbreaking.
and contrary to what John did say at the beginning, I mean, I think a lot of people on the sheer ability of the military to hit its targets, they made that terrible mistake with the school, obviously.
And how about this cancer medical research
but
facility?
I don't think anybody's doubting the power of the United States military or the patriotism and the skill of the people that get on those planes.
John's the first call, his major point was that the Democrats aren't saying enough that obviously they can't have nuclear capacity. I think I've heard it a lot from Democrats. So in any case, Jamie in New Hampshire, you're next. Hi.
Hey.
Hi.
Great show, by the way. Congrats on the new fridge.
Well,
it is beautiful.
It's about time someone congratulated us. Thank you, Jamie. What's up?
You got it. Well, I feel like I found my people with this show, and I'm super intrigued. Something that yesterday was truly historic, but something I've been trying to follow is the impact that Taiwan has on AI and whether or not China plans to make a move. So yesterday when Rubio and Trump were touting that they wanted to cancel our NATO agreement for the North Atlantic Treaty, that scared the crap out of me. Like, what the hell is going on? I wish there were such things as a political muzzle for that animal. He did it. That was a global broadcast last night, and that to me was just scary enough. But
before you continue for a second, since you mentioned Rubio and Trump in the same sense, when Rubio was in the Senate a couple of years ago, he said explicitly, either on the floor or in a tweet, that a president of the United States does not have the power unilaterally to pull out of NATO. It can only be done with Senate approval, which, by the way, he would not get. But just as an aside, 30 seconds, Jamie. Go ahead.
What's going on with Taiwan and China is if we're looking vulnerable or we're even threatening to pull out of NATO, then Taiwan's not protected. And as we talk about this AI global battle, Taiwan is essential for our economy and to maintain the U.S. power when it comes to this AI battle.
Well, I don't think, but correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Trump has shown nearly the interest that his predecessors have shown in protecting Taiwan from Chinese aggression. So I don't think this was the first moment. Jamie, thanks for your kindness and thanks for your call. We're going to continue this conversation with Chuck in a second.
Yeah, he's going to be next. Political commentator Chuck Todd. We're going to talk to him about what he thinks about the speech last night, what he thinks might be the end game in the war in Iran. And also we're going to talk a little bit about his new sports.
We heard a great piece of it this morning.
A great piece that we're going to talk to him about, too. You're listening to BPR and GBH and NEPM. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Brady. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, David Duchovny. The actor, singer, songwriter, novelist, and now poet joins me to talk about his debut collection. Titled About Time, his poems look at family, memory, and aging all through the shifting lens of time. They're provocative, challenging, and accented with moments of dark humor. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Central Square Theatre, presenting Breaking the Code, the story of British mathematician Alan Turing, who broke the Nazis' Enigma code only to be persecuted by his own government for his sexuality. Now through April 26th. CentralSquareTheatre.org.
And Schneider Electric, partnering with the Boston Athletic Association in their work to guide practices that reduce environmental impact and ensure their operations are more sustainable year after year. Learn more at se.com.
Welcome back to BPR and GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow. Live Music Friday is with former U.S. Poet Laureate Robert Pinsky. And our press play segment is with the former editor of the New York Times, Jill Abramson, will join us both at the library. Here now via Zoom, political analyst Chuck Todd. Chuck's the former moderator of NBC's Meet the Press, host of the show Sunday Night with Chuck Todd on the platform Newsphere, also host of the Chuck Toddcast, which you can find at thechucktoddcast.com or youtube.com/@thechucktoddcast. And he launched last week together with J.A. Adane Day. Thank you, Chuck. It's good that someone can pronounce it. Adane.
2 Ds.
Adane. Thank you very much. Host of the new podcast, Dynastic, which we'll talk about again in a second. Chuck, good morning. How are you?
Well, good morning. How are you guys?
Oh, great. Great to talk to you. So I know that before the speech, you thought there may be some escalation in the war going on in Iran. After the speech last night, do you still think so?
I sure do. I mean, this is a classic case where I was probably part of the crowd that said, boy, he should address the nation, blah, 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 blah. Well, if that's what he was going to say, I wish he'd never said anything. I mean, he did nothing to reassure anybody, and he did everything to make everybody feel insecure. I mean, if the whole point was to send the message that this war is coming, look, this is not going to last forever. I don't think invoking World War I was the way to do that, right? The shortest of the 5 wars he chose to mention. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, all 5 of those wars that he mentioned actually had congressional authorization in some form or another. Intriguing. And they all, at some point, were actually referred to as wars. So, he's been trying to have it. Can you have it 5 ways instead of both ways anymore? Right? And all of this. But I for the life of me, I don't know what he intended to do with that speech. And the only concrete thing he did was extend the timeline.
Well, again, so wait a second, but don't gloss over that.
I think that's the most important part of the speech.
Really?
Because he told us it's not going to end for a while.
Yeah, another 2 or 3 weeks.
That's what he told us. It's not going to be weeks.
Yeah, but there was not, there was not even a smidgen of an attempt to address anybody's concern about anything. Well, other than saying in passing, the price of gas is going to come down. Couldn't show any empathy for those people. Yeah. We don't care about the nukes anymore because they're under dust or whatever the hell they are. Strait is going to open naturally. What does naturally mean, Chuck Todd? Do you know what the answer to that question is?
I don't. I mean,
osmosis.
Look, as I said, he is doing to the Strait of Hormuz what he did to Atlantic City. I mean, this is what he does, right? He creates the conditions to create a bigger mess, right? Take what he said. I tried a diplomatic solution. Oh, ripping up the nuclear deal is trying a diplomatic solution? Giving away actual leverage? Allowing this regime 8 years of unchecked abilities to build up their program, all thanks to one decision by him?
Yeah.
Right? And you have the so I guess I come back to the only conclusion I can come to as to why he did this speech is that he's seeing erosion in his base. And he knows that his base, even the skeptics, will at least eat up some of the rhetoric. I don't think they care if they're persuading anybody in the middle or anywhere else. And they certainly had no positive message for America's allies.
Well, you said you think that there could be escalation here. So what does that mean?
It means everything they've done as far as sending the military troops that they're sending. This is not about invading and going into Tehran. This is about trying to secure the infrastructure of the Strait and trying to create security for the Strait. I mean, and that appears, it's not even saying it, right? I think this, but that is the only explanation for our decision to send the 82nd Airborne. If we're about to wrap things up, why would we send the 82nd Airborne?
Yeah, but wouldn't troops be the one issue that would cause even, I don't know, what are there, 53 Republicans in the Senate?
Yeah.
10 of them to say, now we really have to weigh in on this thing?
Sure. What are they going to do? I mean, here's the other problem. And I this is where I empathize a little bit with skeptics. This was a terrible decision to do this, but you can't just walk away now. Right? This is like the worst of all worlds. This is, I think I've used the Chinese finger trap, metaphor, or quicksand, whatever you want to say. This is why so many of us, he tried to boast that none of my presidents would do this. Yeah, because they were all a little wiser than you, brother. They all listened to their military advisors who said, well, here's what you can do, but here's what they're going to do. Closing the strait. This is what it's going to do to the global economy. They're rationing oil in Korea, in South Korea.
That.
They're rationing in Thailand. I mean, this is this idea that we're insulated from this. And that was the other thing about the speech. We don't need to be there. We don't need their oil. We're doing this. So it's a war of choice?
Well,
right? The contradictions. I mean, look. Here's the good news. Historians will be able to look at the date he delivered that speech and go, oh, he gave it on April Fool's Day. Okay, got it.
So let's stay with speculation for a second. You speculated on ground troops. If you were right that he just can't get out of this now because there's so many loose ends, the strait being amongst the loosest of ends, because apparently we don't care about the nuclear stuff anymore, this could go on for not just 2 to 3 more weeks. Could go on for months and months, no?
I think this is Iraq. It's not going to be the same thing fighting in Fallujah and things like this, but here's how it is. This may be a semi-permanent operation if we have to keep the strait open. And sure, I think it becomes multinational at some point if we choose to do what we've done in Venezuela, which is leave the totalitarian regime in place and claim victory. By the way, the asides about Venezuela, to me, were equally alarming. A, he called it a military operation. I thought it was a law enforcement operation, so I'm confused on that. B, he said everything's great. What do you mean everything's great? You've left in place the vice president of a dictator who has tortured and ordered the torture of political opponents. But hey, he's got their oil.
Yeah, he should have ended. He should have ended last night in the spirit of Bill Belichick and just said his final 3 words: "On to Cuba." So that's what he should have done. I'm not talking about it.
I try to be one-liner guy, and you killed it. Yeah. That's good stuff. So on to Havana.
So Chuck, you
want better. On to Havana.
On to Havana probably starts a little bit better than Cuba, but. So when you refine that joke later tonight,
I will. I'm not going to wait till tonight, but that's okay. As soon as you hang up. Hey, so you're more of an historian by far than we are. Has anybody other than Trump's children not suffered at the end of their relationship? I mean, Bondi is arguably on her way out as AG. Gabbard is arguably on her way out as national security. I'm trying to think of a prominent player who didn't either go to jail or get fired or something in the hierarchical part of Trump 1 or 2.
So here's a better way, I think, to frame the question, because I always love to ask this. Whose reputation gets enhanced by working with Donald Trump? Right?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm going to say Michael Cohen, Stormy Daniels.
That's probably,
those are the two, right?
That's right.
Their reputations actually have gotten better, but I don't know if no, it's something I love to point out. I did this deep, sort of dive when I was in the middle of researching a book about sort of his past political forays, and what you learn is nobody stays with him longer than 6 or 7 years. At some point, he alienates everybody around him. And at some point, they're just like, I'm out. And it's sometimes over money. It's sometimes, well, it's usually over money. But it could sometimes be over humiliations and things like that. But it is usually, he cheated somebody out of something. He, pulled back on a promise that he made. And, he'll alienate. I mean, again, I go back to something. You know what phrase you never hear with him sitting in the Oval Office? That he was visited by his college roommate today. His old friend.
Yeah.
There are no such thing as old friends of his.
Well, you know
because
what's
he lights them all on fire.
Yeah, the beauty of this is you could say Tulsi Gabbard committed some sins because she didn't totally throw what's his name, Kent, the guy.
Joe
She
Kent.
didn't throw him totally under the bus.
He disagreed
but
with
is
Trump on the war.
Right? Is anybody the imminent threat issue? Has anybody been more sycophantic than Pam Bondi in every single embarrassing way? And now he's thinking, according to reports, of dumping this woman who has done every deed he requested.
Marjorie, I'm throwing this one to you. Mrs. Todd loves to make note that it's always, he always throws the women first under the bus.
He does. Yes, we have noticed that. Absolutely.
Right? Christine Nome and Pam Bondi, right? It isn't going to be the boys yet.
Not
yet. It's always the women first. And you look at who you just named, Jim, and you're right? It goes from Nome to Bondi to Gabbard.
Well, one of the happiest things I heard on your podcast this week was your speculation that the massive... I was so upset when I saw this Trump library in Miami. Looked like the Chrysler Building in New York City, huge spire, big statue of him, looked like it was 35 feet high.
I don't think they can engineer the building.
Yeah, didn't you say it would sink because it would be too big?
So there's a the reason Miami skyline
Chuck's
is
from Miami, by the way, for those who don't know. Yeah,
it's the limestone that's underneath. I mean, you can't go deep enough with your foundation to build something more than maybe 50 stories. And I'm not, and still that it alone would be sort of a potential eyesore down there. But this is not, and I love this. They're somehow going to build a building that's also going to be able to be 50 stories and house a 747 at some point there too, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Qatar plane, the Qatar plane that they're going to house there, and a helicopter that once flew as Marine One. They want all the things that Reagan got, right? They want to just sort of build that. But did you see that he also wants to make it a hotel?
Oh, no.
No.
Yes, he really said it. He goes, yeah,
No.
probably make it a hotel.
Oh, my God.
And if, and as soon as, and I'm sure he'll get the first casino license in the city of Miami.
But do you think he'll get built there, though? Didn't you think that
don't.
It's not going to happen because it's too tall?
I have this vision of Washington, D.C., that when he leaves on January 20th, 2029, that we're going to be have all these sort of half-baked construction projects that are not completed, right? That we're all stuck and you're just sitting here. I mean, traffic is just worse than ever right now because there's all these there's this massive acceleration in trying to do all these little things he wants done for his birthday and America 250, Trust me, there's a lot of people I've talked to that starting Memorial Day just want to get the hell out of here.
Like what little things?
It's going to be 60 days of crazy and impossibilities to move and things like that. But we all know how his buildings really work, right? He's going to make it look like they're completed, and then we're going to find out that it was just sort of, they rushed it. They used, flawed drywall because they didn't want to wait for better drywall. They used this, and it's like you could just picture he walks away and everything just like the East Wing crumbles.
Could also say everybody could have an arc. I have a half an arc. No one has ever done a half an arc before. So Chuck,
and he wants to violate that rule, which is not a violation because it's technically across the river. But we have this height limit in D.C. in order not to protrude with the Capitol and the monument. And this arch would technically, if it would be in D.C., wouldn't be allowed because it would violate that height limit. But it's in Virginia, so I guess that's what they think. It will help. Where they want to put it, which is right, if you can picture where Arlington Cemetery is, if you've ever gone to it, and sort of the entrance that you go, it's that circle that they want to put this Arc de Trump.
So, Chuck, we only have a couple minutes left. We were listening. Chuck's new venture is Dynastic, which is about sports dynasties with a guy whose name I can't pronounce. What's his name again? Jay?
Well, it's like me. He's got 2 D's in his last name. Adonde.
Adonde. Thank you.
Todd and Adonde.
So we're the first one is on the Dodgers from Brooklyn to L.A. Yep. You told a beautiful little story that we both heard about your father as a little 5-year-old boy and Roy Campanella. Roy Campanella was a star. Wonderful catcher for the Dodgers before he had a horrible injury. Tell this story quickly, if you can, about your father as a kid.
So my dad grew up in Iowa. They were in Chicago for the weekend, and it was like a little family trip. My dad was 5, and like I said, his older sister, my aunt, is my second source here. This, I'd always heard one version of the story, and she confirmed it even after he died. So they're at, I think it's the Drake Hotel in Chicago, because I think that was an interracial hotel, which, by the way, that's stuff you had to think about back then.
That's a good point.
And here's Campanella, probably was after his second MVP. They're in town to play the Cubs, and I think it's my grandfather that recognizes him. So, of course, which is what I've done to my son over the years, right? Hey, go over there and say hi to Roy Campanella, right? So he goes and he goes, go ask him why he's not eating his Wheaties, because back then the MVP of baseball got on the cover of Wheaties, and he was eating bacon and eggs or something like that, and he says, well, I don't do it every day. Well, anyway, the Dodgers lose that day to the Cubs. Campanella sees, like, they're in breakfast again in the morning in the hotel. He sees my dad, the little kid. He says, hey, don't worry. Today I'm going to eat my Wheaties. And my dad was a Dodger fan for life. Like, that's what happens to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old, right? When you have an intimate moment like that, right? Where you're not, but it immediately you just connect and, look.
Chuck's turning around if you're not watching on YouTube.
Paraphernalia to this day.
God.
Great.
And I love this photograph that I purchased, and it's just my way of sort of my homage to my dad. I mean, it is. Campy was always his favorite player, and that's why, and then it's just so the whole. I mean, 3 MVPs in 5 years. Okay.
Wow.
It's like Shohei Ohtani, Barry Bonds. Okay.
Was he the first black MVP in Major League Baseball? Yeah. He was, yeah. That's great.
That's a great story, Chuck.
Great story. Check out the podcast.
Yeah.
It's fabulous.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, guys.
Thank you so much, Todd. Great to talk to you as always. See you later.
Bye now.
We were talking with Chuck Todd, former moderator of NBC's Meet the Press. He now hosts Sunday Night with Chuck Todd on the platform Newsphere and the Chuck Toddcast, and the newly launched Dynastic with J.A. Adande doing it with him. And it sounds like it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, it's fun.
Coming up after this quick break, the mostly men who stormed the Capitol and were pardoned by Donald Trump are perhaps unsurprisingly going on a crime spree, according to the New York Times. We'll talk about it with former Massachusetts Public Safety Secretary Andrea Cabral. He's Jim Browdy. I'm Marjorie Egan. This is BPR and GBH and NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
The demographic cliff, a significant drop-off soon to hit college enrollment.
What we have is a rapidly aging population below replacement fertility rates.
18 years after the Great Recession sent birth rates plummeting, colleges are trying to think ahead.
We are looking ahead to dire circumstances where we just can't fill the jobs that are opening up.
I'm Kurt Carapezza. Hear how higher ed is approaching the demographic cliff on the latest episode of the College Uncovered podcast. Find it wherever you listen.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And MIT Sloan Executive Education, offering short courses on critical topics led by world-class faculty. Professionals can get up to speed on AI, innovation, cybersecurity, and operational strategy. More at executive.mit.edu.
And White Flower Farm, a mail-order plant nursery in Connecticut, offering garden plants, growing supplies, and gifts for gardeners. More at whiteflowerfarm.com.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're back at the library tomorrow live, joined in person by Robert Pinsky, former U.S. Poet Laureate. He is our Live Music Friday. And on Press Play, where we talk about the state of the media, Jill Abramson will join us at the library. She's the former editor of the New York Times. Joined on Zoom by Andrea Cabral. Andrea, of course, former Public Safety Secretary for Massachusetts, former Sheriff of Suffolk County, and a BPR contributor. Hey there, Andrea.
How are you?
We're good.
Very well. So we're going to start with a little clip from yesterday's oral arguments of the birthright citizenship case at the Supreme Court. First, you're going to hear Trump's Solicitor General, John Sauer, and then you're going to hear Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts.
The 19th century framers of this amendment, I think that shows that they've made a mess. Their interpretation has made a mess of the provision.
Well, it certainly wasn't a problem in the 19th century.
No, but of course, we're in a new world now, as Justice Alito pointed out, to where 8 billion people are one plane ride away from having a child who's a U.S. citizen.
Well, it's a new world. It's the same Constitution.
Pretty good line.
Touche. I thought that was pretty good. So, Andrea, people probably know that the president went to hear at least the beginning when Sauer was making his case. He didn't stay for the whole thing. I think he left a couple of minutes into the other attorney's presentation, but I'm not sure. Any case, what did you think?
Well, my first thought was when I heard that they were going to actually take the case up was why. I mean, this should be a 9-0 per curiam, decision. This is a no-brainer. The plain language in the Constitution is who becomes a citizen and who doesn't depends on who was born here or naturalized here. That's the line, right? So the fact that they even gave it a hearing, I thought was disgraceful. It didn't surprise me that there were at least a few of the GOP majority that felt that this was, they were very skeptical of the government's arguments. But like I say, it was a no-brainer. Thomas and Alito will side with Trump because that's who Thomas and Alito are and have been way before Trump was president. But I'm not overly worried about the outcome of the decision, but I also think that the Roberts court and Roberts himself has been playing sort of a numbers game. So what you're going to see coming down the line is I think it's the last decision on the Voting Rights Act, and I forget the name of the plaintiff in the case. But if you know anything about the Supreme Court, you know that they sort of dole out who will write decisions so that everybody gets a turn within a term to write a decision. Every justice gets gets to step up to the plate. Alito hasn't written a decision yet. So I expect Alito is going to write the decision for this case that will truly be the last nail in the coffin of the Voting Rights Act. And Roberts will balance out the decision that they're giving in the birthright citizenship case, because that's the only reason for taking up a case that is a no-brainer, is so that you have two balancing decisions. One that is going to make people go, well, they came down on the right side of things on this one, to balance out the absolutely heinous decision that's going to do the Voting Rights Act in once and for all. And that's what I think that they're doing. So I think Sauer, nobody in the Trump administration covers themselves in any glory. Sauer, I thought, did an absolutely terrible job because he didn't have a winning argument. It is racism. It is going before the Supreme Court and saying, validate our racism because the right kinds of immigrants aren't coming to the country and we're worried about the demographics. That was basically their argument. But I think that the Supreme Court is playing games and gaslighting to a certain degree, making it seem as though this was a case even worthy of a full hearing by the bench. And I think it's to feather their bed or feather their nest so that when they do the ultimate harm to the Voting Rights Act sometime later this year, people will say, well, they're trying to be balanced. And it's just not true.
We're talking to Andrea Cabral. Speaking of federal courts, this is not a Supreme Court issue, but on the same day, a couple of days ago, two different federal courts, one stopped construction on the infamous ballroom, which we're not going to talk about, but very briefly want to talk about and clarify for people, because we didn't do it, which we should have. The day the decision was was handed down on concluding that the defunding in an executive order by Trump of PBS and NPR was violative of the First Amendment. And the only thing we wanted to touch with you is the impact of this is non-existent, because in addition to it does reaffirm that there was a First Amendment violation, which I think is important. But at the same time, since Congress voted to whatever the verb is, rescind, something, the $1+ billion that went to the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, the actual impact of the decision is zero. Is that correct? Other than making a First Amendment statement, is that right?
No, I don't think it I think it's close, but not entirely. I mean, Congress did vote to defund it, but I think that is still in litigation. I think that there are lawsuits against Congress for rescinding funding that was already allocated.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these things were a matter of timing, and it sort of depended on which fiscal year you were in and whether or not you had already gotten a grant. And there's so much of this that, I mean, even though it's a relatively very small fraction in the budget, there are lots of different grants and lots of trickle-down effect for this. So I think it makes a difference. And I think this was an important step to say it was unconstitutional for the president to do it. Also because he issued this executive order, and I'm sure that he did it knowing full well that it was unconstitutional. I think that's part of the reason that he does some of the things that he does, because he wanted to send the message to Congress to defund it, but he also wanted to make sure that every federal agency knew. So, for examul, the Department of Education
That's a very good
has
point.
grants that it gives out to, some of which go to public broadcasters, and they immediately rescinded their money. And I don't know where in the pipeline those grants were. So it is important. Some money may come back to NPR and BPS and PBS, and therefore to some of the stations that they fund. But I think that it's important. It's always important to fight back. It's always important to get these kinds of decisions.
I agree with you.
They'll appeal them, but it's important to show that you're not going to stand for it. And should Democrats, prevail in the midterms, then reinstituting that funding will be even easier.
That's a very good point. Andrea Cabral is who we're talking to.
Andrea, people may recall in this terrible tragedy, Enrique Delgado Garcia died back in September 2024, after he was trying to become a state trooper, and he was injured in a boxing ring. Apparently he got a concussion and kept. The next day, he was back training, and he died. And the Attorney General has just did an investigation. 4 troopers have been charged with manslaughter for their involvement. But the Globe has got a story today saying that there still has not been a release of the report on what happened there, even though 2 more classes have taken place since this time, and hundreds of new troopers have been joined the force. I mean, they're arguing that this is they're implying this is really dragging their feet. So you used to be in charge of all this stuff. What do you think?
Well, what I read was that they had extended the contract.
Yes.
This, I think it's a association of police chiefs. That's who the contract is with to do this internal review. They extended it for another year. It is not at all unusual when you undertake a review like this, given the number of people that you have to interview and the amount of history that you sort of have to go through, for it to take longer than a year. They may have been overly optimistic that it was only going to take a year. To me, it would have made, and this is me not knowing the full scope of everything, but to me, it would have made more sense if you had to extend the contract, to just extend it for 6 months and then do some benchmarking to see where they are. It does appear the colonel has apparently, Colonel Noble has apparently said they're in the final stages of it. But you definitely want to, before the initial contract is up, you definitely want to touch base with whoever's doing this kind of work and find out where they are and how close they are, because you should anticipate that you're going to start to get questions about it. Part of this is also about sort of the nature of it. So the Globe story mentions, and I agree with retired BPD officer Tom Nolan.
Oh, he's great.
How long standing it is, not just with the state police, but with police departments everywhere, for their training curriculum to be antiquated and to focus more on the physical and almost sort of the physical tests of it, almost like a hazing, and not necessarily keeping up with modern day policing, which focuses a lot more on de-escalation and psychological strength in dealing with someone who is in dire straits or is very violent, and trying to de-escalate to keep everyone safe. And I think that curricula have to keep up with the way police officers do work. And what you're trying to get out of your recruits is the best skill set, hone the best skill set you can to meet the needs of modern day policing. And training academy curricula, boxing matches and other physical, dragging very heavy bags and things that take a huge physical toll, and the things that take a psychological toll being largely sort of personal or intending to wear them down. It's not that there's not some room for developing psychological strength and endurance, because you deal with many things when you're out on the street. But it does seem as though the training academy curricula don't keep up. And I remember when I was sheriff, we were very intentional about it and sort of trying to change some of those things to focus more on dealing with modern day corrections versus the way corrections used to operate or the way policing used to operate.
The thing, I don't know anything about the length of investigations, and since you didn't suggest that the time frame was a problem, I assume you're more sympathetic to it than I. If you're doing an investigation after someone dies and the investigation will only affect the death of that individual, I'm less concerned about how long it takes. I mean, obviously it should be expedited for the survivors, the family, et cetera, the people who care about this person. But when the policy that's being looked into has an effect on everybody who goes after, including, as Marjorie in the Globe said, 2 classes, and you tie that to the fact, and the following we raised with Andrea Campbell the other day, is that while they identified and indicted 4 line people, state troopers, they didn't. They consciously chose is it David? What's the guy's name? David Meyer,
the former prosecutor in Suffolk County,
who was appointed by Campbell. Did not name the supervisors who may have been involved. Their behavior didn't rise to criminal level, obviously, according to Meyer. But they obviously, some of them had to know something. They may still be in place, and so it seems to me the need for speed. Even though they've now outlawed boxing and the training, is huge. Am I being unfair?
No, I don't disagree that this should be done with all deliberate speed. It does seem as though this was not strictly limited to this one particular death. I get the impression reading the story that they also have a larger scope where they're looking at.
I think you're right.
The way, yeah, and that is the part that I think takes longer, right? And it can take longer for a lot of reasons. That said, everyone should be really, really mindful, especially given the history and the times that we're living in, that it has to be quick. And when you're hiring whoever you hire, you need to get a sense from them. If it's the Police Chiefs Association, they all have training academies or send their people to academies. They have a sense of what academies are about. These aren't ingenues sort of entering into the process and not understanding it. So you should be able to get a decent timeline and hold them to it. That said, I don't know the full scope of who they need to interview. And so I would say if you extend it for another 6 months and they come in and they finish by September, then I think you're okay. They go past September and I think they're in real trouble.
By the way, we only have a minute left. I'm going to upset Marjorie because she really wants to talk about how the January 6th pardonees are now on a crime spree. We'll save that till next time we talk to you. Do you share Meyer and Campbell's position that the reason why the superiors, who may have had some involvement, even if not criminal, should not have their names disclosed is because it'll come out at trial? And how would it prejudice a trial to say that here are the supervisors who were aware of this training and allowed it to continue? Why shouldn't we know that right now?
I don't know for a fact, but I assume that they are balancing the fact that this type of training was the accepted curriculum, right? So they weren't violating an internal policy by giving it a thumbs up. It had very tragic consequences here. That's why I'm saying with this review, the issue was this necessary? it existed, and it was part of the state police's training academy. So as a supervisor, not stepping in on unilaterally and saying you can't do this anymore was not a violation. But I think that's part of what they intended.
We got it. So we'll do the pardonese next week. Good to see you, Andrea Cabral. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. We've been speaking with Andrea Cabral, former Public Safety Secretary from Massachusetts and former Sheriff of Suffolk County. She is a BPR contributor. We say goodbye to those of you listening on NEPM. Thank you much for tuning in. Fabulous 413 starts at 3. We're going to keep going here in Boston. Common Man for Ukraine co-founders Susan Mathison and Lisa Mure just got back from Ukraine. We're going to talk to them up next.
GBH is committed to lifelong learning, and the Beacon Circle shares that commitment with gifts of $2,400 or more. It's one big way to help keep our community informed and connected. Learn more at Beacon Circle.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And MIT Federal Credit Union, committed to helping members grow their balances while keeping them accessible with their high-yield money market. Memberships open to the public. More at mitfcu.org, federally insured by NCUA. And Music Worcester, presenting Jordi Savall and his early music ensembles at Mechanics Hall on April 11th. Audiences will experience music from around the world from the 12th to the 18th centuries. More at musicworcester.org.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Marjorie.
Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. You forget to remind me, Jim. You were supposed to remind me that I start second hour. Anyway, welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady, Marjorie, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. Our press play segment is going to be a great one. We've got Jill Abramson, who is the former editor of the New York Times, joining us. And then for live music, we have got the former poet laureate of the United States, Robert Pinsky, is going to be with us. And one more programming note, the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, is going to be with us April 28th from noon to 1, at the library, taking our questions and yours. Hello again, Jim.
One last update, by the way. We talked to Chuck Todd about Tulsi Gabbard, the head of national security, and the attorney general being at great risk. CNN is now reporting from sources that Trump actually told Bondi that he may soon replace her as attorney general, obviously saying you weren't sycophantic enough. Our next guests have been with us before. They're among the co-founders of the aid group Common Man for Ukraine, Susan Mathison and Lisa Mure. They just returned again from a trip to Ukraine where the war with Russia, as you know, is in its 4th year. While they were there, Russia launched a barrage of about 1,000 drones and missiles throughout the country, but the convoy still delivered 50,000. Well, they'll tell us what you did in a second. It's an incredible organization. Check it out at commonmanforukraine.org. Lisa, Susan, welcome back. It's great to see both of you. Thanks so much.
Thank you both for coming in again. So, Susan, for people that haven't heard you guys before, what's the deal? What do you guys do?
We're a small nonprofit. We started in New Hampshire, but we're nationwide now, and we provide humanitarian aid to children in safe houses and frontline villages, and trauma counseling to children whose fathers have been killed in the war and to their mothers.
How'd this thing come about again?
The four of us live in the Plymouth area in central New Hampshire, and we were talking about what was happening.
Why don't you mention the other two, by the way, since you should, yeah.
Sure. My partner, Alex Ray, and Susan's partner, Stephen Rand. So we're all from the Plymouth area, and we were just talking as friends at the coffee shop about what was happening with Russia lining up the tanks along the border and starting their full-scale invasion, and we were just appalled and horrified and wanted to do something about it.
And there have been 15 forays directly from your end, and counting your allies in Poland, a total of 50. Give us the total mass up to this last trip, which we want to talk about with some specificity. The total mass of what your organization has done. Susan, you want to tell us?
About 4 million pounds of food. Yep. 10,000 sleeping bag, hundreds of generators to safe houses. 6,000 hand-knit hats from all over the United States, about 10,000 Beanie Babies to little kids who don't have any toys, And 1,600 children have completed our 3-week trauma counseling retreats. And since we just started our Widows program in August, about 70 mothers of these children have completed.
What was the goal? When the four of you were conceiving of this, as you say, small organization, how many years ago?
Well,
2022.
Began, okay.
Yeah, right.
What did you? What was your expectation as to what your potential work product could be?
The thing we knew for sure is that people all over the United States felt the same way, that this atrocity that was happening was just simple injustice, and we wanted to do something. And I don't think we thought of, like, how long will it take? We just knew the time to act is now, and so we did.
You know, I don't think I asked you this before, and I was thinking about this when I was reading in preparation of talking to you again today. you get all this food that you're taking into the Ukraine in trucks. Where do you get the food? Is it in Poland? And should you just go over there with bags full of money and buy all this food? I mean, how does it work?
Well, we raise the money here in the U.S. mostly, and it goes into the nonprofit foundation of the Plymouth Rotary Club. It's wired over to the Rotary Clubs in Poland. They purchase the food in the EU or in Poland, and Polish Rotary volunteers load up the vans with this food. We buy it in bulk, but it's also in small packages. So when we go to the villages, they can take like 10 packages of groat or kashi, about 10 cans of canned chicken and things like that. Sometimes we do take fresh fruit. So it's something that we can hand out and distribute it fairly easily.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And I wonder, too, these people in Poland are really stepping up as well.
It's amazing. None of this magic could happen without the volunteers from Poland. So we have a cadre of, I would say, 3 or 4 dozen drivers that we trust, because your life depends on their responsible activity inside Ukraine. So we trust them. We know that any truck that they're entrusted with will end up delivering food directly to the people who need it. These volunteers leave their homes and families and businesses and enter a war zone for 7 to 10 days, driving 3,000 miles across Ukraine and back to feed children they don't know.
3,000 miles is from here to California.
Correct.
Yeah, it's a long way.
As we just finished that this week. Yes,
Yeah.
3,000 miles.
And I also read where you had to have netting on some of these vehicles to protect you from drones.
I don't even know what that is.
No,
Could you
actually,
describe
no.
that, Lisa? What is that?
Yeah, no, what we learned, we were in Kharkiv region, and so it's very close to the front, and we were watching them they were putting netting over the roads. So there are now hundreds of miles of roads where the netting is over the road, even on the sides, to prevent the drones from being able
How
to
does
hit
it prevent
targets
the
on
drones
road.
from hitting targets?
It kind of scrambles their system, right?
I
So they
see.
can't quite see well enough through the netting to hit their target.
So what was the purpose of this particular foray, for lack of a better name? This trip's goals were what?
So, number one, we go to the children's retreat, meet the children, meet
What's
with
the children's
staff.
retreat?
So these are 30 children ages 8 through 12 whose fathers have been killed in the war. These kids live in Ukraine. We bring them through our contacts with the military. We identify them and bring them into Poland for 3 weeks, where we have a Ukrainian MD, a Ukrainian child psychologist, and 3 Ukrainian educators. And they run outside, they play, they hike, they swim, they go on cultural tours, and they don't hear any air raid sirens.
How old are these kids? What's the
8
range?
to 12. 8 to 12.
Those 2 kids you have pictures
Yeah,
of.
do you have are those kids from this thing? What
These 2 kids are from a frontline village
Let me hold this up while you're describing.
east of Izium.
Can we get this here for a second?
So to get to this place, you'd have to
closer,
first
maybe?
get to Kherson, then
Yeah.
drive 2 hours to Izium, which is a deoccupied city, has been absolutely ransacked. Terrible atrocities happened there, and now is back in Ukrainian hands. And then from there, drive an hour and a half on a dirt road that's not been maintained in at least 4 years. Arduous journey. And when we arrived at this village, we drove up, and on the right of us is a tank, a number of military vehicles, many, many bunkers, every bunker covered with netting to prevent a drone from entering the bunkers. And here are children outside within 100 feet of all this. They are living right next to the front line. This is the last bastion, and here they are. And I have to say, as you can see from this photo and all that we take, you can see the effects of 4 years of war on the faces of these children.
Yeah.
How many kids have been displaced in Poland?
2.5 million.
What does that mean in real terms, displaced? Just on the move, without a permanent home or place
Absolutely.
to live?
They could be staying in a safe house. They could be staying in their aunt's house. They could be staying in a group home. They could be moving. And we've heard from a lot of children in our trauma counseling retreat that they have been moving every few months to find a safe place. As you know, even Lviv has been bombed lately. So there's really not a safe place in Ukraine.
We're talking to Susan Mathison and Lisa Mure, who are two of the four founders of this spectacular organization, commonmanforukraine.org.
Lisa, I was reading where now they're building schools below ground. So tell us about those schools.
So we were in Venezia on our last trip, and we were given a tour of one of these schools, and it's connected to the school through an elevator, and then down below ground, it's a brand new facility. They have air filtration, they have a speaker system, they have classrooms, a cafeteria, an exercise room. So they have built a place for the kids to be safe so they can still attend school even through the air alerts.
How many of these schools are there?
I don't know. I just actually read an article recently that they're building more and more every month because that's the country's commitment to their children. We want to build as many underground schools as we can.
Can we talk for another second about this thing in Poland you do with these kids whose fathers have been killed? What do the experts say? You said you have Ukrainian doctors there, those sort of... When you are taken out of a war zone and this in 24/7 trauma-infected kind of environment, and you have this peace and warmth and all the other good things that have, how do you prepare a little kid, like an 8-year-old on that end of the spectrum, to have to go back to what they just were lucky enough to leave for a short period of time?
A couple of things. We armor them with some tools of courage and stress relief and how to cope with their trauma. Number 2, mom's there. Mom's still in Ukraine. They're going home. Of course, yeah. They're going home. And then the last thing is something tied up with the Ukrainian identity, which is connected to how they've done this for 4 years, which is an absolute commitment to their homeland, to their culture, to their history, and to their future as an independent country. These kids call themselves the sons and daughters of the heroes of Ukraine. A little boy will say, "My name is Vadim. I am the son of a hero of Ukraine."
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Oh, my God.
How do you teach courage and dealing with trauma? What does that entail?
Well, we have Ukrainian certified psychologists to do that. One of the tools we give them is a deck of cope cards, which is printed. They are printed in the United States in Ukrainian. And it's a deck of cards that says, if you're feeling anxious, try this coping skill. So it might be deep breathing. It might be tapping. It might be tracing your finger. It might be going outside and trying some exercise. And so we ask these kids to, when you're feeling stress, go to your cope cards, pull out a card, and we do that with them so they know how to use this. And then, we tell the mothers, because as we've learned, to hold up the child, you've got to hold up the mother.
Well, I remember I don't even know if it's relevant because warfare has changed so much, but I remember when I was young reading stories about the Blitz in Great Britain and where the planes coming every night and bombing London, and the mother's ability to not have a nervous breakdown really impacted the child's ability. Is that still?
Exactly. And that's how we came to this, was we had been doing these sessions with children for over 2 years. And part of our evaluation quality control was to meet with these mothers months later to see if we've had a durable effect with the kids. And we had rave reviews with the moms, and they said, I wish we had something like this. And it was just like, of course, why didn't we think of that? And so we immediately started the Widows Retreats.
Well, tell us about the Widows Retreats as well. Yeah, Lisa, do you want to share that with us?
Sure. They happen every month as well as the children's, and it's at the same retreat house in Zakopane, Poland, and they're about maybe 12 to 20 widows of soldiers of Ukraine that come. They come with a licensed psychologist as well. It's very similar to the children's program. They do activities together. They do process their grief and their trauma together in small group sessions. They do art therapy, music therapy. They go on outings together, and they build a sisterhood of mutual support. And it's very similar. Like, the one thing about the children's retreat that I find most powerful is that the kids connect with each other. They come from all over Ukraine. They don't know each other before they get there. So they get to be with all the other kids who've lost their fathers as well. So that's what's happening with the widows too. They get to meet other widows and talk about what it feels like to, run the household by themselves, make decisions about their child's safety, make decisions about, when is it okay for me to date again in my own community. I mean, they have, all the, the same emotions that we do. And it's an opportunity for them to be away from those responsibilities, away from the war, and just process that with other women.
Let's talk about you guys for a minute. I know you hate doing that, but we're going to do it anyway. No, I mean, you do. I mean, we know you a little bit. Where did you go when you were there, and how much danger were you in while you were away? And that's what you don't like talking about.
Well, we were absolutely as in danger as any other Ukrainian, and we have to be brave like the Ukrainians. Yes, at night the drones would come, the anti-drone fire would be visible right outside our windows. The windows would shake and rattle, and yeah. But
how do you deal with that?
There's kids waiting. Like, look at these children. Look in their faces. Look in their eyes. They're waiting for help. They're waiting to know there's hope. And we feel so responsible to the donors that entrust us with their hard-earned money to deliver that aid to those kids. I feel a grave responsibility to them to do what's right.
Where were you in Ukraine?
So if you think of where Kherson is, like northeast Ukraine, go southeast another 2 hours to Izium, and then go east again. We drove right past the trenches. We drove past the Dragon's Teeth and the concertina wire and all the bunkers. We were at the line.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but some kids from New Hampshire Holderness School. So these are teenagers.
Well, you didn't finish the sentence.
Yeah. They went with you?
Well, they go on their own with their advisor, Pam Mulcahy, who was an amazing woman. But that's a great story. We were asked to come and present to the Holderness School student body a couple of years ago about the program. And afterwards, students from their student council or service council came and said, would you come to our smaller meeting? We'd really like to do something about it. So we did, and we brainstormed ideas. We had set up a pen pal system with them, with the kids in the Zakopane retreat. Then they wanted to do more. So now they do an iced coffee cart 3 mornings a week in their own school to raise money. And they give that about $800 to $1,000 every month to Common Man for Ukraine. And then at one of the meetings, they said, we want to do more. We want to go there. And we don't have a big infrastructure. So we said, if your school is going to say okay, and you've got an advisor and you can pay your way, we will plug you into the retreat. And I think that's their 5th or 6th trip.
So they're going to Poland.
They're going to Poland.
I was going to say, I don't know if I was a mom, if I want my 13-year-old to be going by the concertina wire.
But it is a miraculous thing to watch these American teenagers fold into a group of 35 Ukrainian children who've just lost their fathers. And the common language is a smile, let's make a beaded bracelet together, let's play some soccer. And we feel like we're also building not only ambassadors of peace, but also these young adults' career choices will be influenced by this experience.
So I'm guessing, I think it's a pretty safe guess, that the people who you come in touch with have great love and affection for you, for the kids, for others who have put their lives at some risk to help them. How do they feel about our government, as our government shows virtually no interest in helping these people anymore? We talked the other day on the air about the fact that Trump and Rubio, Secretary of State, are now talking about, well, it's just divert some more money from Ukraine to this war of choice in the Middle East. How do they feel about our government?
We hang a banner on our trucks when we open the doors to give out food. And that banner has a Polish flag, an American flag, and a Ukrainian flag. And we're proud to say we represent a part of the United States.
Part of the United States.
Yeah, we're representing thousands and thousands of people who really do care about
Well,
Ukraine.
you're avoiding the question, though. Do they
They see me as an
choices.
individual. They don't
do.
see me as a piece of the government. They see me as an American
Do they
who
ask
cares.
you why our government has decided to give up on this effort to protect their democracy, Lisa?
That's actually not the Ukrainian way. They wouldn't be approaching us and asking. They're very stoic people. But when we start the conversation, and I did it this time just by apologizing, I actually apologized to those widows, and I apologized in some of those villages. And I said, I'm sorry, our country is not doing what we're supposed to be doing to support you. And they were so grateful just to hear those words. So grateful. So
Well,
it was really moving.
You know, I also wonder, this is a long, hard road they've got ahead of them. I mean, this has gone on longer than World War II, hasn't it? I mean, which was a long war itself. So how do people keep their it's their country, it's an existential thing. I get it, but still.
I think it's historical for them. They've been doing this through Stalin and Nazi Germany, and they just keep plugging away at their freedom and their identity. They have no. I asked actually a couple of the moms in the villages. I said, well, is it? People ask in America, like, what's the big deal? Can't you just give up a little bit of the land to end the war? And they said, absolutely not. That's our land. We fought for it. Our people have already died for it. We're not going to give it up now.
So what's happening on June 5th in Lexington, Massachusetts?
Well, a wonderful musical event, classical Ukrainian music, sponsored by the Ukrainian Music Initiative, a group that's volunteering their time for us at the Fallen Church on June 5th at 7 o'clock. You can go to our website, commonmanforukraine.org, and purchase a ticket or make a donation. You'll get a little glimpse of Ukrainian culture.
How does your family feel about you doing this? They must be worried every time you leave.
Not really.
No,
I think the first trip or two, one of my kids texted and said, "Gee, I heard there was bombing in the area that you're in," and I just said, "Nah, I'm fine. Don't worry about it." So they take it all in stride.
I want my kids to see that I stand for something.
Yeah.
That I'm a widow myself, and when I had a time of need, my community stood with me, and I think it's only right that I stand for people who need help.
What do you do for newcomers to Common Man for Ukraine? They've been with us several times. What do you do with yourself before this project?
I'm president of the local Habitat for Humanity affiliate. I'm a retired forester with the USDA Forest Service.
Really?
Yeah.
We knew that. How about you, Lisa?
I worked in public health and mental health for a long time, and I'm the chair of a affordable housing group in central New Hampshire.
So neither of you say bad things about other people. We spend our lives saying bad things about other people. What separates, this is not a criticism of others, so don't take it that way. What separates the two of you and your colleagues in this from those of us who talk a good game but are not willing to make the level of commitment?
Who would never go to Ukraine
Well,
in a
I'm
million
serious.
years because
I
they'd be afraid.
I think it's just a set of circumstances that we never could have planned for. I mean, I will give a big shout out to my partner, Alex Ray. He just has that out of the box. Let's just go, throw risk aside. And I think that's what motivated our first trip. And from there, it's just been a set of amazing, miraculous circumstances and people that have come together. The Polish Rotarians are amazing. The people we interact with in Ukraine, the people around here that just offer to do concerts and raise money and knit hats. I mean, it's just a momentum that's grown from that very first step that we took.
We had a company in New Jersey reach out to us out of the blue and make a really sizable donation. We followed up with them with the great work they've done. And then they said, those kids at the front line, they need toys. I bet they don't have toys. So they Lincoln Electric sponsored 1,500 bags of toys that we're able to give. So, and you are standing up. You are being courageous right now by telling the story so that people can learn about the kids in Ukraine. And there's children of war all over the world right now. We need to do better so that there aren't this look in their eyes.
Well, let me tell you, can I just keep that going for 1 second? The reason that matters beyond the obvious, another courageous soul with whom we spoke and have spoken regularly is Olga Cherevko.
Oh, yes.
From the UN Human Rights, I don't know the formal name, and she's been stationed most of the time in Gaza. The work that she and her colleagues do and you and your colleagues do when a kid is lived. So
decades long.
The point that you're making about these children and other millions of children like them around the world is just so spot on. So.
Okay, Ukrainian eggs. I've seen them in Christmas ornaments.
Can we get a shot of this, or is get a little? They're so intricately.
They're pasankas and the Ukraine, really important.
Yeah.
Okay, so June 5th in Lexington, a music concert performed by Ukrainian Music Initiative. Obviously, it'll benefit the work of this incredible organization and the people who populated it. Again, commonmen.org.
Thank you again for coming in. Coming up after this quick break, we're going to open the lines.
Another transition from hell.
Yeah, this is how we end our show on Thursday. Who is the a-hole hater? Yeah, that's right. You judge them. This is about asking what people are having for lunch. I'm Marjorie Houston Brad, BPR 89.7 GBH Tribute.
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, critters, creatures, and the science that explains them in detail. We'll learn how vocal cords of horses produce that classic whinnying sound, and meet an ant researcher who creates enormous, detailed images of ants' bodies.
Absolutely. If you're interested in morphologically perfect ants, then we got you covered.
Cool. That's the Curiosity Desk today at 1 on GBH 89.7.
For our programs comes from you.
And Framingham State University, where the strength of a Commonwealth begins with access to opportunity. At FSU, students examine evidence and serve the public good. Framingham State University. Live to the truth. Learn more at framingham.edu.
And the Lyric Stage, presenting Angry, Ross, and Shamelessly Gorgeous by Pearl Clegg, a comedy with wit, heart, and soul. Now through April 12th at Lyric Stage Boston. Tickets at lyricstage.com.
Welcome back to BPR and 89.7 GBH, Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Back at the library tomorrow with former U.S. Poet Laureate Robert Pinsky. He is live Music Friday with his colleagues, and Jill Abramson, former editor of the New York Times, will be with us in person there for Press Play. Let me just say how every time they're on the show, the generosity of our listeners to this organization is huge, and we hope and assume people are doing. In any case, you've made it. This is really hard. Feels their privacy is being invaded by all of their fellow worker bees asking about what everyone's having for lunch every day. This sad sack chooses to eat it. The car eater's response, "Why are you so obsessed with me?" In turn, the rest of the team shun them for their rudeness all afternoon. So who's the jerk here? I'll call them the nosy coworker who asked all the questions about food, or the office, let me be kind, introvert who doesn't want to be asked this question. The number's 877-301-897. More people of the table before ordering for themselves. This is a variation of the theme. The number's 877-301-897. Who's the jerk, Marjorie?
Is the person that keeps asking what you're having for lunch.
And why is that? Why? Just answer in a polite sort of way and move on. So the question again is, who is the a-hole? Is it the nosy person? I don't know at all, but Marjorie, the nosy person who is asking all these questions about a coworker's food, or is it the damn car
have a
their lunch.
If you have a big, huge Reuben sandwich or pastrami on rice, some really good sandwich sitting there, and somebody comes over and asks you what you're having, it's pastrami on rice.
Go ahead. I'm having a Reuben sandwich, Marjorie.
Jim, it looks really, really good.
Well, tell you, it is. It's ringing you maybe half of one of these sandwiches.
I think you said to the normal person that's sitting there, that sandwich looks fantastic.
Yeah.
The person that's eating the sandwich, or maybe that bought the sandwich, is going to say, "Do you want some?" And they probably do, and they're going to have to. It's what you do all the time.
Yeah.
You always say,
"What's your point?
Can I have a little piece, whatever it is you're eating?" And then, of course, you have it.
I don't take.
No,
I say, excuse me.
That's not.
What are you having for lunch, Marjorie?
Yeah.
And
it's kind of nosy. And then if you make it yourself, I mean, I think people feel funny about this. This poor woman, did you read what she's doing? She eats in the car. She eats in the car every day. Somebody just texted to say this all sounds so emotionally draining. The texter says they'd be eating in the bathroom. This is upsetting, finding this whole situation. Mind your own business.
By the way, let me just say what a fraud Marjorie is. I brought in today a container of what we said the other day with Corby are raspberries, which are becoming much more expensive because of something, berries or fertilizer or some such thing. Marjorie said to me, "Oh, where did you get those raspberries?" I told you what supermarket and what I paid for them. Lo and behold, she did exactly what she's criticizing.
Hold on.
After which, what did you do? Excuse me, am I done? What after what you asked me? What did you do?
I ate them.
It cost where I got them, fresh they were they moldy because they get moldy really quickly.
They get moldy really quickly.
They're about the best raspberries
They're
ever.
exemplary.
Okay, 87C, the SC perturbed enough that she tried to start. I don't know who they are.
From New Hampshire, Jamie. He says, he said, "I'm a mail carrier and I eat my lunch with you guys on my radio."
Really? What do you have for lunch?
Jamie.
What do you have for lunch, Jamie?
Jamie, back and tell Jim what you're.
Very simple. Let's be honest.
You don't like what I have for lunch, thank God.
No, peanut butter and banana is not my.
Right,
are usually a product of what I have cooked that night before the day. And Marjorie often comments, questions about what I have made, which
is all
and I'm not making it up in the slightest. Let's say
you bring leftover fruit.
Like yesterday, actually.
Oh, really? What did you make yesterday?
It was beef bourguignon, actually. Hello. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, folks.
Hi.
I love listening to you.
Well, thank you.
Just a quick thank you. So just a quick comment. I'm retired, and I have a little part-time job at the community college gym. And being retired, I'm over naturally, and what did you put in it today?
Yeah.
I might comment on their chicken, and kind of like, what do I talk to a 20-year-old about? What do they talk to a 60-something-year-old about? So it's almost like talking about the Red Sox.
Exactly.
You know?
And are you offended? Are you offended when they ask you questions about your food?
My job is I can sort of mentor them in a way.
Beautiful.
Just thought I could throw that out. Have a great day, folks.
Yeah, Michelle, thank you for calling. Now, Michelle mentioned something that is unique, though. Tuna. There's always a debate about what you put in your mayonnaise. Olive oil. There's a lot of room for discussion there with tuna. So I guess if you want to have a big discussion, because he had no mayonnaise, he had dry tuna.
Conversation opener.
That's right. How many times have you told me you put in tuna fish? You do put in celery. Don't you put in onions as well?
In minuscule, very heavily diced, like big time diced, so it's tiny little pieces. So there's a crunch. I want you to know, since you're asking again, what do I put it in? Hello? She just said, I only put onion in it, by the way, when I eat it at home.
Oh, okay.
Because if I eat it here, I worry that you'll be troubled by the
in the microwave.
No, it was actually not. I took it to the library yesterday, and I ate it before you all got there.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi. I'm going to preface this by saying I understand there's work banter and some talk, and I get that. But I do think it seems like this individual is really diving into food every day, this coworker. And I just, as someone who formerly had an eating disorder, I think, not that everyone needs to be aware, but sometimes it can be difficult. And even if they don't intend it, it can be difficult.
Kind of what I'm eating, and send a message in that response that's the end of the conversation without being rude. Don't you feel that most could pull that off, Gabriella?
Wrong. It seems like the individual keeps talking about food. Even if you were trying to politely maybe hearing that correctly.
Yeah,
She's surrounded by people in the
fair.
break room asking you too. They may want people to judge them for what they're eating for lunch, Jim.
Well, maybe they're not judging him. Gabriella,
like, why
thank
are
you for
all
your
those
perspective.
potato chips out of the vending machine? You don't
How take their milk?
No,
well, I have.
quite felt these days.
Well, that wasn't the point of
Everyone
that.
is talking
okay,
about
that was not asking. The Hindenburg, Jim, pre-explosion. I mean, really? What are you reading into all this?
Because you have just let me eat, have a conversation about the Red Sox or about
when have
the
I
weather
hovered
with you or lunch with you anywhere. There's been a lot of hovering.
I've hovered no setting.
Early in our career, we used to do a TV show together.
Denny
We went to
CNN.
Johnny's Luncheonette in Newton. You went down the aisles to Johnny's Luncheonette, asking people if they knew who you were.
None
Put
knew.
your hands.
Hash browns off their dishes while I was asking who the thing who I was. And none of them, by the way, had any idea who I
It's
was.
like he's somebody to stand and tell you. I mean, it was unbelievable. The
I
way
just-
people feel if they have strangers standing over them and saying, "Do you know who I am?" and taking food off their plate. It was unbelievable.
But we're aware there's an issue with YouTube
There
stream
is?
buffering and pixelating or something. We'll return.
Okay, 877-301-8970 is the number to call if you feel like you don't want everybody asking you what you're having for lunch, or you kind of person that pours over everybody's Reuben sandwich, pastrami sandwich, hoping they're going to give you some, tell them how good it looks. 877-301-8970. We'll be right back.
Death Valley sage lives where a lot of people don't, in the forbidding mountains in and around its namesake.
They either require quite a bit of hiking, scrambling up mountains, or driving on back roads.
But an unusual big bloom here presented an opportunity for one botanist who's been searching for the plant's seeds for more than 15 years. Story on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping customers achieve their vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding them from design to completion. With showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com. And New England Recovery Center, providing inpatient addiction treatment in state-of-the-art facilities located in Westboro, Mass. Learn more at newenglandrecoverycenter.org or by calling 1-877-MY-REHAB.
Welcome back to BPR on 89.7 GBH. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. It's Thursday afternoon, so obviously this is Am I the A-hole? And one in particular asks repeated many questions of another coworker about what they're having for questions about her tuna fish. So she's fine if you ask about the right things, not about the wrong thing. I believe it is totally appropriate and socially responsible to be asking your coworkers in a warm way what they're eating. Now, I got a text from one who it is, who didn't say, but from a prominent restaurateur in town, who used many, a trigger thing for many. Back in the day, it would show class, ethnicity, how much your parents cared, etc. That blank lingers. Can't believe I said trigger, forgive me. And that was the end of the thing.
That's an excellent point.
It was?
We had a conversation before the show about, can we say, Jamie talked about bringing food of Italian ethnic that was coming through the paper bag. And it was terrible for him. He felt ostracized at school and went home and begged.
They picked the wrong day to quit amphetamines. That is Jamie. By the way, Jamie says there's a reason I was a roly-poly kid. I was a roly-poly kid growing up. Yeah. I mean, that's me speaking. Now back to him. I had meatball sandwiches and pasta every day and peanut butter and jelly. Jesus, that is incredible.
But there's also, don't you notice when your kids were little
Yeah.
and you brought them here to go to preschool, that was always a big deal what the parents made.
Because it was a comment on the parents.
Yeah, I mean, some of the people, they had radishes and they had little pieces of corn. Other people had potato chips and white bread.
Mostly sensitive. Zoe just sent us a note. I have a solution for the office introvert. Just bring fish and reheat it in the microwave. Problem solved. No one's going to want your lunch. It's not my favorite thing.
It is
By the way, I would like to say one thing about that because you bring it up repeatedly. just like yesterday at the library, when I reheat fish in the microwave, I always do at least an hour before I know you're going to come in.
It doesn't
by
matter.
which time most of the smell is dissipated.
No, fish lingers. Fish lingers for a very long time.
Fine.
We have another mail carrier who says he's listening to us while he eats
What'd he
his
say?
lunch. I got to find him. I've missed him. I get a lot of texts on this subject, so I can't find it. Yeah. What's that noise? That's the microwave oven.
They're backing up. Okay.
They're backing up. Okay.
I have no idea what it is either. Okay, Seth, what is it?
I don't know.
Seth
It's
in
the microwave oven heating up the fish.
it's a microwave. Thank you.
Yeah, it's heating up the fish.
Here's Seth in Rhode Island. Long time ago, I was on a first date. The restaurant tables were very close, very, very close. The guy at the table next to us reached his fork over into my plate. I immediately jabbed his hand with my fork. Please tell me that was not you, Jim. In all seriousness, Seth, I've been looking for you for years. I had to go to the ER after I met you at that restaurant, but I'm fine now, so everything is forgiven.
You know, I have asked people in restaurants that got something that looked really good.
Oh, that's fine.
I have
isn't it?
asked. Yeah.
How is that? How do you justify that?
Because I'm about to order and I see something
Why
go
is that
by
any
that looks really
different?
good. I said,
Why is
what's
that any
that?
different?
Because I'm not doing it so I can have half of their meal. I'm doing it because they've made a really good choice.
By the way, I am an exception to the rule. Most people who ask that question are not attempting to get part of the meal. I may be. Most people are just asking because they're interested. Like maybe Steve in Wakefield. Steve, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I think we're good. Thank you for asking.
Long-time listener. I love the show.
Thank you.
I enjoyed both of you.
Both?
I have to.
Oh, good.
Every topic involving food, Jim is always wrong.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's very kind of you, Steve. Go ahead.
I don't know what he thinks about touching people's food, taking people's food, commenting on people's food.
Gotta eat. Gotta eat, Steve.
And you seem like a nice person.
I'm not that nice a person. That may explain it. So why do you side with Marjorie on this thing and think they shouldn't ask the questions? Go ahead.
No, people can ask, but there's nothing wrong with wanting to be left alone. If you have a busy work day, you interact with people, you're not really that into the chit-chat that goes on all day anyway. And I used to tell people during work, and most of my coworkers I was very friendly with, they knew I like to be left alone. I like to tell them, I got 5 kids at home. This is like my quiet time for the day. I eat my lunch, I read the paper, and I go back to work. I cannot conceive of caring what one of my coworkers is eating for lunch.
Okay, Steve, can I tell you, again, we're in different places here. Let's try this and see how you react. What'd you bring for lunch today, Steve? What'd you bring?
I'm working now, which is ideal for someone like me. And I'm having some leftover chicken pie, which is
exactly. And you're laughing. That was great. You weren't made uncomfortable there, were you?
Oh, no, none of it makes me uncomfortable. I just don't like to spend my lunch hour doing the same chit-chat that goes on all day at work. And I don't, and what's the point? What do you care what I'm eating for lunch?
Could you do
exactly. It's kind of an odd question.
Steve, I got to go. Could you email me where you got the ingredients and how much you spent for them, please? And I'll get back to you after the show. Steve, thanks for an excellent call, actually. Thank you.
Here's Sam from Fairhaven.
What
He
did he
says,
say? Oh.
I was a lifelong brown bagger for lunch. One summer, note that, years ago, I brought a tuna sandwich for lunch. Then a group of coworkers invited me to go out for lunch. I accepted, left work for the weekend, forgot about the tuna, and left it in my desk drawer. The smell when he entered the office Monday morning was like overwhelming. Can you imagine that, Jim?
I would eat a tuna sandwich. Like, I'm just trying. The reason I put it, I'm thinking, what's the shelf life issue?
Oh, God. I remember there was a guy when I worked at the Standard Times in New Bedford when I was a kid, the newspaper there, a guy retired and we had to clean out his desk and he had like 7 sandwiches in there and all this leftover food and all these mice droppings. It was the grossest thing ever. It was terrible.
So here is, Jamie just wrote us a note. We can all imagine it too, Jim, because it happened at GH. Someone mailed Jim salmon or something. It's not. Oh, that is true. We forget. That's not my fault. Forget. We didn't pick it up from the mailroom, and it turned out the dry ice or something expired or melted. And It was rather smeltacious.
I do remember that. Here's someone who has a solution.
What is it?
Because they don't like questions about what they're eating for lunch at all. So their solution is to put earphones on and tell everybody I'm listening to a podcast. Sorry. You could also say you're on the phone, but then you'd have to talk back. So the podcast
What
is
did
probably
you have
better.
for lunch today, by the way? In all seriousness, what did you have for lunch?
I haven't eaten lunch yet.
What did you bring?
I brought my smoothie that I usually bring, and I had put your raspberries in my smoothie.
How hard?
I brought my smoothie that I usually bring, and I had put your raspberries in my smoothie.
How hard was that? How hard was that? Was that okay? Were you offended? Did you feel like I violated your space by asking? I mean, I just did it. I didn't care, but I was just doing it because
you have a thing with food. I mean, it's clear. You
Yeah.
have a thing with food. We're done. The music has
the
started.
show's over usually at 1 o'clock because that's the contract we signed.
And you know what time it is, Jim?
What?
It's time for lunch.
It is time for
That's
lunch.
one of the things about getting out at 1 o'clock now.
Don't
that
ask
we can,
me what I'm having.
I won't ask you what you're having. Okay. Thank you very much for
And by the
listening.
way, speaking of that, can people stop emailing us and saying why'd they cut your time back? We asked
We asked.
that we be moved from 3 to 2 hours.
we
It's
begged,
driving us nuts.
actually. We begged.
And they were kind enough to say yes.
They
That's
were,
it.
and
Okay.
I consider myself very
Whatever.
lucky.
We'll talk about the spilled gazpacho next time. That's another studio story. We don't have time
To go
for
with
today.
the coffee that's
No,
all
let's
over the
just,
wall?
No, it's not anymore. Let's go.
Okay.
They power cleaned it for Edgar. God, Marjorie, time's running out here. Let's move it.
Thank you for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. We have a podcast. You can listen to that 24/7 if you want to. Or check out, we have a very clever TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. You should check that out. Tune in tomorrow. We're going to be back at the Boston Public Library. Poet Laureate, United States Poet Laureate, Robert Pinsky is going to be with us, and he's going to do some music as well. You don't want to miss that. Former executive editor of the New York Times, Jill Abramson, big deal in journalism, plus NBC 10 Boston media maven, our favorite local woman, Sue O'Connell. We haven't talked to her in a while. I miss talking to Sue. Our crew is Zoe Matthews, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, additional support from Ronan Keene. Colin Cockrell ran our YouTube stream today. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jane Bologna. The Curiosity Desk with Edgar B. Hurd III starts immediately after us. He'll examine new research into how horses make their whinny sound. How about that? Culture Show with Jared Bowen. It starts at 2. He'll speak with David Duchovny about his inaugural collection of poems.
Time's up.
About time. Bye.
Bye.
From the stories of centuries past to discoveries that will define our future, How Did We Get Here's, how-tos, and more. Journey with us down the rabbit hole on the Curiosity Desk. Coming up next on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Central Square Theatre, presenting Breaking the Code, the story of British mathematician Alan Turing, who broke the Nazis' Enigma code only to be persecuted by his own government for his sexuality. Now through April 26th. CentralSquareTheatre.org.
And Porter Square Books, hosting Life of Pi author Jan Martel for his new novel, Son of Nobody, a retelling of the Trojan War from the perspective of two commoners. April 3rd. Info at portersquarebooks.com.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Today on the Curiosity Desk, critters, creatures, and the science that explains them. One researcher spent a non-stop week making anatomical scans of ants, and the result is details that have never been seen before.
Absolutely. If you're interested in morphologically perfect ants, then we got you covered.
Then we'll learn how the vocal cords of horses produce that classic whinnying sound. Turns out, horses can vocalize on 2 frequencies simultaneously. A scientist explains how they pull that off, plus creatures of a mythological sort. An art exhibit at Harvard all about sea monsters. It's all ahead this hour on the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. The White House is outlining the next steps toward ending the war with Iran. In a national address last night, President Trump outlined what he considers accomplished objectives in the conflict, which is now in its second month. NPR's Dee Parvez has been tracking the response from the Iranian government.
In a speech updating the nation on the war with Iran, President Trump said that the conflict would end soon, but that U.S. strikes on Iran would intensify over the next 2 to 3 weeks. He also said this:
"We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong."
There has yet to be an official response from Iran, but response from some officials on social media was swift and sharp. For instance, Saeed Majed Mousavi, the aerospace commander for Iran's Revolutionary Guard, wrote on X, "You, with your paltry 250-year-old history, threaten a civilization over 6,000 years old." The X account belonging to the Consulate General of the Islamic Republic of Iran in Mumbai posted, "They said Iran needed to be great again. Now suddenly the goalpost is the Stone Age? Funny thing, civilizations that go back to empires like the Achaemenids don't really do again, they just are." Shortly after President Trump's speech, in which he also claimed that Iran's military capabilities were destroyed, Iran launched a series of missiles at Israel and Bahrain. Dee Parvez, NPR News, Vaughan, Turkey.
House Speaker Mike Johnson will attempt to get Republicans to back a bipartisan deal to fund all of the Department of Homeland Security except its immigration enforcement teams. NPR's Eric McDaniel has more.
Speaker Johnson last Friday panned the proposal that he's now asking Republicans to support.
This gambit that was done last night is a joke.
They voted down that plan from the Senate, and now he'll have to ask his members to support the same deal. It funds DHS immediately, except for ICE and parts of Customs and Border Protection. So folks like airport security can be paid in the short term, while a bigger 3-year deal is worked out to fund all of DHS through the remainder of Trump's time in the White House. And thanks to a parliamentary maneuver called reconciliation, that long-term deal shouldn't need any support from Democrats. First, though, Johnson has to convince hardline Republicans that he's no longer joking. Eric McDaniel, NPR News, Washington.
The Commerce Department says the U.S. trade deficit widened in February to just over $57 billion. Imports and exports both increased during the month, but as NPR's Scott Horsley reports, imports rose more.
The news comes a year to the day after the president ordered double-digit tariffs on virtually everything Americans buy from other countries. What Trump called Liberation Day tariffs were later struck down by the Supreme Court. Customs officials are now working on a process to refund $166 billion that was wrongly collected.
That's NPR's Scott Horsley reporting. On Wall Street, the Dow was down 189 points. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The city of Cambridge has agreed to pay more than $180,000 to 7 former employees after failing to deliver their final paychecks on time, which is a violation of the Massachusetts Wage Act. The Harvard Crimson reports the employees who were laid off as part of a November restructuring of the city's diversity-related commissions were required under state law to receive their final paychecks in full on their last day of employment, which was January 16. Instead, the payments were issued a week later. Under the Wage Act, employees who miss final payment deadlines can be liable for mandatory damages, and in this case, Cambridge owed each employee additional compensation equal to twice the delayed wages, along with payment for unused vacation and personal time. The city is also required to cover legal fees for 2 employees who retained counsel. And after 3 years of work, the Brookline School Committee is still trying to come up with an updated student civil rights policy. Brookline.News reports that most of the debate is centered around how to make the policy accessible and whether it should use terms like microaggression. A subcommittee is also working on how to include language on gender expression and identity, as well as a new state law called the Crown Act, which prohibits discrimination against natural and protective hairstyles. Brookline's current civil rights policy is called the Policy Against Discrimination, Harassment, Sexual Harassment, and Retaliation. But the school committee's chair says that policy is outdated and is now confident the new civil rights policy will be made soon. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. And hey, if you can pull up that stream for this part of the show, you will not regret it. We've got some stunning images coming your way. Recently, scientists published landmark research into mind-boggling biodiversity in the world of ants. Yes, ants. The study was published in the journal Nature Methods, and perhaps the most striking takeaway is incredible magnifying images of what ants look like inside and out. The project was the result of one relentless week of work, relied on something called a synchrotron particle accelerator, and it shows vivid anatomical details of 2,000 ant specimens from all corners of the globe. Evan Economo was part of that research. He's a professor at the University of Maryland and an authority on all things ants, and we had the pleasure to get tiny with him recently. He explained that sample size is just a minuscule representation of the entire ant world.
Yeah, so those were 2,000 specimens from about 800 species. So we know about around 15,000 species of ants right now. Of course, there are many others probably that we haven't discovered yet. But importantly, those 800 were strategically chosen to cover most of the main groups of ants. So it wasn't a random selection. So we think we've covered a lot of ant diversity, and we're also going to keep scanning to fill the gaps.
And how much greater would you say our understanding is of ants now versus before the study?
Well, I think this gives us the data to understand ants a lot better. So this is sort of the raw material that we can use for all kinds of different science going forward, and also other things. But we have to sort of hack into it now. We're just at the beginning.
Jessica Ware, who's a curator and chair of invertebrate zoology at the American Museum of Natural History, she was not involved in this, but she called the work transformative and then said, I don't use that word lightly. So that's got to feel pretty good when you got somebody like that saying something like that.
Yeah, we've been really happy with the reception that we've gotten both from scientists and also the general public with this project.
Okay, let's talk about these images, because when we say images and, data that we got to dig into, this is not just superficial. We're not just talking about pictures of ants, right? We're talking about all kinds of looks at ants. What exactly did you do?
Right. So we used a technique called micro CT. And so probably the easiest way to understand it is think about medical CT. So when you go to the hospital, you get a CT scan and you get a bunch of slices through your body. And from that, you can see the outside, of course, but also the shape of all the different organs inside. So what we did was micro CT, which has a much, much higher resolution and magnification than what we would use for a human. And from that, you can get both the external shape, the 3D shape, but also all the different structures inside, from the brain to the muscles to the digestive system and so on. So it kind of gives a total representation of shape of the organism.
Were there surprises as you started to see these images? Were you surprised at all? Was this like eye-opening in any way?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been working with these kinds of images for over a decade, and from that we see all kinds of different interesting things about how these little machines work and how the animals are constructed and how key traits evolve. And also sometimes we come across surprises like parasites and other things that were inside the organisms that we didn't know about. And this new project is really about how do we scale that up into a massive scale and capture this across thousands of individuals.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with the University of Maryland's Evan Economo about breakthroughs in research on ants. So, Evan, here in Massachusetts, we famously have a transportation system which we call the MBTA. And, we're constantly repairing it. We're constantly working on it. But more recently, we've had these situations where rather than, say, working overnight every night for a series of time, we do something like we shut it down so we can do a bunch of work all at one time and get it done faster than we would. It sounds like this is kind of the situation you were faced with this project, which is to say, as you said, we've had this technology that could very slowly get these images over time, and it would take you forever. But you had this super labor intensive week where you got a bunch of these. Tell me about the decision to make that happen and what that week was like.
Right. So we've been working on this for a long time, but that was with a machine that you'd find in a laboratory. So a laboratory scanner, and those are very low throughput. So we could scan one ant, but it might take 10 hours. But we really, collaborated with this group, the Synchrotron in Germany, led by Thomas van de Kamp, and they've developed robotic sample changers and other tools to accelerate the process. So, and due to the nature of the X-rays that come off of a particle accelerator, you can scan an individual in about 30 seconds. So that sort of redesigns the whole workflow for us. So instead of picking away at one or a few species at a time, we can kind of do all the prep work, get all the specimens ready, locked and loaded, and then go there and blast through them in one block of time. So we were scanning around the clock for a whole week.
Around like 24 hours a day?
Yeah, 24 hours a day.
Really? And had anything like this been done before with ants? And whose idea was this to go, hey, there's a place in Germany where we could do this 24 hours a day for a week. We have a whole bunch done.
Well, we kind of had the idea to, again, we had previously been studying a few interesting species here and there, more opportunistically for a given project. But the bigger ambition was how can we get a library across the whole diversity of this group, both for ants and then later for all species. And so that was in the back of my mind, and I became aware of a colleague, Thomas van de Kamp, who also does X-ray scanning, but in the synchrotron environment. And there they had been working on making it more high throughput. So it was really combining the need with the technology and doing a new design of a project. They hadn't been using it for this kind of project before.
What's the advantage for whether it be researchers or, innovators of having this kind of level of detail about this many ants? Like, what's the point?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's a lot of different use cases for this. I mean, imagine we have all this complexity and diversity around the world in the bodies of organisms that are out there, and that so far is not digitized in this way. So it can't really tap into our digital world at all. And of course, the most direct use is for scientists who want to analyze, how these organisms work, how they've evolved over time, how do they have different abilities to understand evolutionary biology. But then beyond that, we can use that to inform how we design robots, how we design new technology. And also another use cases for sort of more art and other cultural reasons. So for example, people who are animators and may want to use it in a movie or something like that, they can access incredibly detailed models of real organisms in a way that they couldn't in the past. And so all of that, I think, is coming at a good time too for all the new analysis pipelines that are coming online with AI and sort of big data analyses. We have an ability to actually process this scale of data and do something with it.
So I'm hearing you say we could have a really high level Ants reboot coming for fans of that animated series.
Sure, yeah,
or animated film.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're interested in morphologically perfect ants, then we got you covered.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. We're talking with the University of Maryland's Evan Economo about ants. Can we just talk, move away from the study a little bit and just talk about ants for a bit?
Sure.
Like, what do you admire about ants? Somebody who's like this deep in the world of ants, what do you love about them?
I think, what's fascinating about ants is their ecological and behavioral flexibility, how many different things they've learned to do and evolved to do, and also how many different ways they make a living. And and this alongside that, it's sort of the role of sociality as well in facilitating all these different behaviors and ways of making a living. So once you live in a society, it opens up another dimension of what you can do.
Wait, so can we dig into how they make a living, which is an amazing turn of phrase when it comes to ants? What are the different ways they make a living?
Well, I mean, any organism needs to gather resources and needs somewhere to live and habitat or a nest, and needs to reproduce. It has these basic needs. But when you live in a society, you can do all of these things in a different way than what you would otherwise. So one example is ants have evolved large-scale agriculture, certain ants, where they basically, collect material. You've seen leafcutter ants probably on TV, those are ants that capture leaves. Well, they're taking those leaves underground and putting them in big underground gardens, underground farms, and they have very complicated systems of tending the crop of fungus that they grow there. And so they eat that fungus. And so that's a different way of making a living, if you will, than say many other insects. And living in a society allows for something very complex like that to evolve in a way that it wouldn't if they were a solitary insect.
So, it seems that, listen, I'm obviously not an animal expert, but, it appears that ants are sort of inclined to evolve in a diversity of ways, unique ways, much more so than some other creatures. Do we have a sense of why that is? Is it that sociology piece that you're talking about? Is that why we see them, kind of evolving in so many different directions?
Yeah, I think so. I think ants have a really incredible range of things they do. And I think that, of course, there are other types of organisms that are very diverse too, in other ways. But with ants, you see a diversity of social complexity and social behaviors that you don't find in many other organisms. So they live in most terrestrial habitats on Earth. And they're very dominant in those habitats. They're one of the most abundant organisms in our world. So they're both important and also intellectually very interesting to study.
Can we talk about some cool ants, some favorite ants of yours? I mean, we got a lot to choose from. Do you have some that got a special place in your heart?
Yeah, so I already mentioned the fungus farming ants, which are one of my big favorites, but another one I like and we've studied in my lab is trapjaw ants. So trapjaw ants have evolved a mousetrap-like mandible mechanism. So this is to solve the problem of how do you close your mandibles, your jaws really fast, especially to catch really fast prey. And they've sort of devised a way, so biological muscle has a limit to how fast it can contract. But if you find a way to store energy like a spring and release it, it can be extraordinarily fast. And that's sort of what we do when we snap our fingers, right? If you do this, you can't really make much of a noise. So with trapjaw ants, they've developed a way to sort of lock the mandibles in an open position and load that with force and then release it. And when it's released, it can go at incredible speeds and incredible accelerations, over 1 million Gs in some species.
That's crazy. Where are these ants? Where do you find them?
Well, trapjaw ants there's a number of different kinds, and they're found throughout the world, mainly in tropical areas, but you do get them coming up to southern parts of the United States, and so you can find them pretty commonly if you know what you're looking for.
So maybe not in a kitchen in Boston, but possibly in a kitchen in Florida.
Yeah. I think I haven't seen them in Boston, but for sure in southern part of the U.S. there's some good trapjaw ants.
So I've got a friend who's always telling me about this species of ant. I think it's called a Mediterranean harvester ant that some researchers believe can give birth to another species. Is that true?
Yeah. So that one thing about ants is you get the evolution of a lot of really exotic reproductive systems, what we would call it. So you actually have a case where two species have come together in a very unusual way, and one species can produce individuals of another species. It's really sort of unprecedented from what we've seen in other groups of organisms.
And we talked about, you said, that probably about 15,000 different species of ants, and that could be an undercount. But do we have a sense of individual ants? Like how many ants are there on planet Earth? Do we have a decent attempt at a number for that?
Yeah, well, obviously that's not easy to know for sure, but some colleagues of mine, and I wasn't involved with this, but some colleagues of mine estimated the number of ants on Earth, and they came up with a figure of about 20 quadrillion. So for every
how much is a single quadrillion?
Well, a single quadrillion, it's one level up from billion, right? So it's
many billions
number. So for every human on Earth, there's like 1 billion ants. Let's put it that way.
That's crazy. That is a crazy number of ants. As somebody who probably knows ants better than most people walking here on the planet, what do you find is sort of what is the mystery about ants that is still left for you? Like, what is the thing that the more you find out about ants, it continues to elude you? Like, what is your white whale? What are you chasing when it comes to ants?
I think when you're a scientist, there's always a lot of white whales out there. I mean, in fact, what seems like we know a lot, but actually we're discovering big things all the time. And the number of species where we really understand them in all their detail is very, very small, if any. So I think for me, what I really want to what I would really love to know is, all that diversity out there that we can talk about, both morphological diversity, social structures, behaviors, how did genomes produce that diversity? How have genomes evolved around the world? And what changes on the molecular level that allows for that diversity to come about? And also, what was the context? What was the selective pressures and the environmental pressures that led to that? So that's kind of a big one. Another big one that I think we'd all like to know is, how did the sociality evolve in the ancestor of ants? So what were the conditions and circumstances that you got something that was actually a solitary wasp evolving into a very complicated society like that? And that's really tough to get at, especially because we weren't there, and that is something that happened over 100 million years ago.
So wait, did you say a solitary wasp, which is to say that all ants evolved from a wasp?
Yeah, so ants are the ancestor of ant would be something that we would recognize as a solitary wasp, and so ants and bees both are related to a broader group of organisms. But the ancestor of an ant was solitary living, and so it made a big transition to a social and even what we call eusocial, where there's division of labor, extreme division of labor. The queen, for example, handles all the reproduction, and workers do other jobs. And that's a very extreme and rare form of social organization in nature.
The artist Salvador Dali had a fascination with ants, which was, sort of a classic approach avoidance thing. And it's a motif that appears in his works throughout his career. He once said in 1959 that he eventually reached the conclusion that the ant is the superior being. Would you agree with that? Is the ant a superior being?
I don't really think of it like that. I think if we were to, I think there's one sort of way that I think people look at social insects and they see all this working together, and it sort of looks like everything's all hunky-dory. But actually, ant societies are pretty brutal as well. And there's a lot of selfishness and a lot of push and pull of different forces inside an ant society. And I wouldn't want us to start living our lives in our society by mimicking ants at all. I think that would be pretty rough. But I think what's interesting there, that's also interesting us, is sort of the forces that are pulling society apart, and how those get, and the forces that are pulling it together, which is cooperation. So how does cooperation evolve? So I think ants, we have a lot to learn from, but I wouldn't call them superior. If I'm going to have a dinner party, I'd still rather humans there, I think.
So ants, complicated societies, the push, the pull, ants are just like us.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we've been speaking with Evan Economo, professor at the University of Maryland. By the way, to check out the results from Evan and his colleagues' research, you can go to antscan.info or the journal Nature Methods at nature.com. Evan, thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
In the journal Nature Methods, that's at nature.com. Curiosity drives our show, obviously, but your curiosity is what lets us start the car up in the first place. So send us your questions and we'll do our best to get you answers. There's a submission form at gbh.org, or you can leave us a voice memo at 877-301-8970. Here are a few examples of some recent listener questions. What happened to the collection of the Tremont Street Wax Museum that closed down? How about this one? Why do we have to pay to file our taxes? all great questions. Add yours to the mix. Use that submission form at gbh.org, or you can always leave us a voice memo at 877-301-8970. Ants are famously good at communicating with each other, but you'd be hard-pressed to mimic how an ant talks. Horses, though? Horses we can do.
Like a whinny.
Don't they do that? Okay.
That's a go?
How's that?
That was so good.
There you go. I've been preparing my whole life for this.
Good sports here in our newsroom. Coming up, actual horses have vocalizations that are much more complicated than our coworkers can mimic. We'll get into it with a researcher who's dedicated more than 15 years to studying it. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH 89.7. Don't go anywhere.
Support for our programs comes from you.
I'm Jared Bowen. Coming up on The Culture Show, David Duchovny. The actor, singer, songwriter, novelist, and now poet joins me to talk about his debut collection. Titled About Time, his poems look at family, memory, and aging all through the shifting lens of time. They're provocative, challenging, and accented with moments of dark humor. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
And H&H, the Handel and Haydn Society. Spring blossoms with Handel's water music and the first Brandenburg Concerto, led by artistic director Jonathan Cohen, April 10th and 12th at Symphony Hall. Tickets at handelandhaydn.org. And Biogen. For nearly 50 years, Biogen has been committed to advancing biotechnology innovations to develop new medicines for people with hard-to-treat diseases. Biogen, making breakthroughs happen. Biogen.com.
You're listening to the Curiosity Desk on GBH. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. We're streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News. Here's one of the more recognizable sounds in the animal kingdom. But there's more to a horse whinny than meets the ear. In a recent paper published in the journal Current Biology, a group of researchers set out to uncover the mechanics of how horses make this sound. Élodie Briefer is one of them. She's an animal behavioral scientist and principal investigator of the University of Copenhagen's Behavioral Ecology Group. She joined us recently for a conversation about how horses whinny. So one of the things that we like to talk about here on The Curiosity, sort of one of our animating principles on this show, is we love to investigate mysteries hiding in plain sight. We recently did an interview with a Harvard researcher who finally worked out why basketball sneakers squeak the way they do on the court. And I thought to myself, gosh, we've been playing basketball for more than 100 years and we didn't know this. But what you did ups the game tremendously. Like we've been in a relationship with horses for thousands of years, and yet we didn't exactly know how they were making their sounds.
Yeah, exactly. We've been knowing horses for over 4,000 years when they were domesticated, and we still didn't know how they could actually make such high-pitched sound considering their body size. So they make a sound that is much higher than predicted by their body size.
And this is something that has, somewhat mystified scientists for a long time. And yet, as you started to dig into it, you found out that there's more to the story than we even thought. It's not just one sound.
Yeah, exactly. There is actually a lower sound that is at the size, the frequency predicted by the body size, which is much lower. They just simply make two sounds at the same time.
And did we know prior to you doing this that they were making two sounds at once, or is that new?
I found that out 15 years ago, and around 2000, actually yes, I found out that they make two sounds at the same time and what these sounds mean, but we didn't know how they were making these sounds. So now, thanks to this new study, we know that.
So how uncommon is it for an animal to make two sounds at once? I mean, are there other animals that can do this?
Yeah, it's quite common that it happens once in a while, like in baby cries when babies scream or when we scream, then the two vocal folds, they get decoupled, so one can vibrate faster than the other. And then we sporadically make two sounds, but that an animal makes two sounds all the time, that's actually quite rare. I mean, not so much in birds, but in mammals, it's definitely very rare. The two best examples are wapitis and horses.
Interesting. So how did you go about investigating this? So you sort of have this thing that you know it's happening for 15 years, but yet you're like, all right, like let's figure out exactly how it's happening. So how did you attack this problem?
Yeah, that took us quite a long time indeed. So the first thing we did in terms of timeline, at least, was to put endoscopy recording, so video inside the throat of the stallions, and then pass a mare in front of them. So that's a quite common procedure, but usually they don't vocalize during that time. But we managed to make them vocalize by showing them a mare, so we could see exactly what's going on in the throat when they make the sound. And then we took some larynges from dead horses from butcher in France, and then we blew air through it to see, what if a isolated larynx can actually make these sounds. And we also shifted from air to helium because helium has certain properties and it makes frequencies that are whistles and not linked to tissue vibration to shift up. And we also did CT scans of these larynges. And finally, we also recorded horses affected by neuropathy that paralyzed one of the vocal folds.
So we've got a little sound of a horse right here that I want to play. I wonder if we could listen to this and then you can describe sort of based on everything you know now exactly what's happening and maybe parse out these two sounds that you're talking about for us. Let's hear a little. Let's hear that one more time. Okay, so the two sounds there. What are those two sounds? Can you kind of describe which is which?
So yes, so horses have three main call types that they emit. So one of them is the nicker that has only the low frequency, squeals that have only the high frequency, and whinnies that you just played that have both frequencies at the same time. And in most cases, it starts with a high pitch, and then the second one is added up on top. And that kind of ends up like a nicker. It sounds like a nicker at the end.
How many horse whinnies have you listened to, would you say, in your life now?
It's very hard to say because I used to ride horses when I was young, so quite a lot. But for work, I mean, we had about 30 subjects, I think. The first experiment I did when I found out they have two frequencies, we placed them in different, it was a study on emotional, vocal expression of emotions in horses. So we placed them in different contexts. Then we recorded them and then I analyzed the sound, but we don't listen to them over and over. We extract the whinnies and then we analyze them with the program. And that's where I could see, like also visually on image of the sound, that there's two frequencies and verify and extract them.
What was, what was that moment like when you first saw that? When you actually first saw, you were like, wait a minute, there are two separate frequencies here. Were you like, holy crap?
Yeah, the first time I listened to one of my recordings first, I was like, but there is two horses here. What's going on? And then I looked at it, and because I'm quite trained acoustician, so I noticed I could see the two fundamental frequencies, and then I contacted a friend who at that time was a postdoc working on wapitis that I mentioned also do that. And then she told me, yeah, that's exactly like what wapitis do. But it's really, rare in mammals. Actually, when we published that first paper, we had trouble with the reviewers who didn't want to believe the story. Like we didn't want to believe there were two frequencies.
Yeah. It's fascinating that you finally got to the bottom of exactly what's happening physically that allows them to make these two sounds simultaneously. But do we have a sense of why they do this?
So we might have an idea because one of them, so the high frequency is much louder. So we think that in horses and wapitis also that do that, maybe the high frequency is aimed at long distance communication. And then the low frequency that is much less loud is for close distance communication. And then the other hypothesis is what I found out during the first study. I was looking at vocal expression of emotions, and what we saw is that the low frequency indicates whether the emotion of the horse that emit the sound is high or very intense or not. And then the high frequency indicates whether the emotion is positive or negative. So basically, these two frequencies could help horses to tell others about these two dimensions of emotions, the intensity and the valence, whether it's positive or negative.
So that hypothesis, which I find really interesting, how do you test something like that, or how do you learn more about whether or not that is in fact what is happening?
So we will also have to test, of course, which we already done but not analyzed fully. So we'll also have to check if others perceive that information, so if indeed they use it. So we actually have done a bunch of playback where we played only the low frequency that we extracted from whinnies, only the high one, and then we look at how the horses respond. So we're analyzing these playbacks. Now we still have some data to process. And we've done also, again, that we haven't analyzed, but a propagation experiment where we play the sound over different distances. I mean, we play the sound and then we record them at different distances. And then at some point, you only hear the high frequency, not the low one, so you can see how far that propagates in the environment.
So, you said you rode horses when you were young. You first discovered this fact 15 or so years ago that they make two sounds. Now you have spent a whole bunch of time working out exactly what is happening in their bodies that allows them to do this. You're hypothesizing about what emotions they might be expressing while doing this. How far do you want to take this? What is your dream? What do you think in your lifetime as a scientist is there to be learned about horses, and how far can you get to achieving what you want to achieve?
That's a good question. I don't know how far I can go, but at least the next step I want to do regarding horses, because I'm also working on many other species in parallel. But for horses, I plan to look more at the phylogeny of the equids. So look at we've recorded plain zebras and domestic donkeys, but I also want to look at other species of zebras and also wild donkeys and see what's the range of frequencies they produce. We know that so far, none of the ones we recorded have biphonation, so these two frequencies, but maybe they can also make very high-pitched sounds, so we still have to check that. So see how that it kind of evolved.
What does learning more about how horses may be communicating, what does that do for us as people? Does it help us understand horses better? Does it help us understand animals better? Does it change anything when it comes to the way people relate to horses or animals more broadly?
Yeah, I mean, it highlights, especially this study, highlights how flexible is the mammalian laryngeal vocal production system. So here in horses, we showed that they not only make these two frequencies, but also the high one, they make it with a laryngeal whistle, so whistle in the throat, which has only been described in rodents so far. So it shows how much the larynx of mammals can evolve different ways to make sounds, much higher or much lower than their body size predicts. And I mean, for us, the study I've done at least on vocal expression of emotions in horses that allows us to understand the emotions of horses. So we've described how whinnies sound when horses are happy or sad, if you want, in terms of human emotions, and then people can pay attention to that and kind of have an idea of whether the horse is excited or stressed, for example.
Now, crucially, I think a lot of people like to do impressions of horses. Do you think this will help improve our ability to mimic a horse when we make horse sounds?
Yeah, I don't know how actually people who imitate horses manage to do the two frequencies at the same time. When I try, I don't manage to do that. But I actually, through my studies, learned to how you can basically whistle and talk at the same time, and that makes two frequencies, but it's not made in the throat like horses would do that.
When you say you can, do you mean you personally can? Can we hear that? Can you whistle and talk at the same time?
Well, not talk, but make a sound, yeah.
We've been speaking with Élodie Briefer from the University of Copenhagen. She's a principal investigator on new research out last month on horse whinnies. Thank you so much for being with us on the Curiosity Desk. Élodie did us a solid. She recorded herself performing that last vocal trick she described, whistling and making another sound at the same time. It's subtle, but listen again. 2 frequencies simultaneously. Cool stuff. I'm going to try. Oh, hey! Élodie Briefer's research on horse vocalizations, co-authored with colleagues, is published in the journal Current Biology. Good news, fans of the show. We've got an easy way for you to never miss a curiosity question or answer. Subscribe to our podcast. In the 2 short months we've been on the air, we've endeavored to perk up your afternoons with conversations about what it takes to set a pogo stick world record, why John Adams was kind of a rotten dad, and how mRNA vaccines work on a molecular level. It's all there for you in our podcast feed. Find and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay with us just ahead for more animal stories, this time of a mythological sort. Sea monsters in the deep, dark oceans and what our stories about them reveal about us. This is the Curiosity Desk on GBH. Stay with us.
Massachusetts' gateway cities have been in some major need of TLC, but in Revere, people are already starting to see the results of the state's efforts to bring life back to these neighborhoods.
The Shirley Ave neighborhood is probably one of the most transformed neighborhoods. I would even contest that it's one of the most largely transformed neighborhoods in the Commonwealth over the last decade.
I'm Trajan Warren. You can find the rest of that story online at gbhnews.org.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds. New properties are added often. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And Newbury Court, serving Concord, Massachusetts for 30 years as a not-for-profit continuing care retirement community dedicated to older adults. More at newburycourt.org.
Welcome back to the Curiosity Desk. I'm Edgar B. Herwick III here on GBH 89.7 FM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. What is the oldest and most universal monster in literature and mythology? The sea monster. From the marine creatures that vexed Odysseus to the great white in Jaws. But how does our imagination about mythical monsters influence our relationship with actual marine life that has long lived undersea? That is the central question of an exhibit on now at the Harvard Museum of Natural History called Sea Monsters, Wonders of Nature and Imagination. The exhibit was inspired by a popular course taught by evolutionary biologist Peter Girguis. Peter walked me through the exhibit when it first opened.
When I was thinking about teaching a course called a freshman seminar, which is a way of getting first-year students really comfortable with professors, I got to thinking, maybe talking about sea monsters is an opportunity to talk about the real creatures of the ocean, right? That are many people think are monstrous, and also talking about the sea monsters that live in our imaginations and sea monsters that are a part of our past, our cultures and traditions. And in this class, we touch upon all of those, but what really is blowing my mind, Edgar, is that I began to realize that we all have this amazingly intimate relationship with sea monsters. Everybody I have met has an idea in their mind of what a sea monster is. And in many cases, it's the same thing. The kraken comes to mind and sea serpents. So, sea monsters aren't just this, fantastical notion of something in the ocean, but it's really something that lives deeply with all of us.
Yeah, and one of the things that you touch on in this exhibition is this notion that sea monsters have been with us both across cultures, sort of everywhere. You pick your culture, there's one, and also across time, like thousands and thousands of years ago, and as we just said, right up to today.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll talk about my own timeline, going back to the days of when I was just a young kid. I just fell in love with all these deep sea animals that I read and learned about, and I thought, these are really cool. And it caught my attention that when I shared my enthusiasm, for these, things like the anglerfish or giant squid with friends or family, a lot of them were creeped out. And I thought, well, why is this? Even as a 6 or 7-year-old kid, it struck me as odd that people had these real strong responses to these things that they really knew very little about.
Well, what do you think's going on there?
I love that question. That is the heart of this exhibition, and frankly, the heart of, I think, our ongoing conversations about sea monsters in the classroom and frankly, outside of the classroom. At the end of the day, I think that humans are, I like to think of us as an ocean-adjacent species. And what I mean by that is so many civilizations have arisen on the shores of an ocean, and we have this just inextricable relationship with the ocean, but we are also terrified of it. It is big, it is vast, it is beyond our ability to control. And you can see how people ascribe these sort of terrors to the deep sea, this dark, seemingly endless body of water, and can imagine fantastical creatures in there. So I think that's part of it.
When you walk into the exhibition space, the first thing that you're greeted with is, you were talking about everybody kind of has a notion of sea monsters. We have these drawings. You've asked people to kind of draw their notion of a sea monster, and we see some of those. You kind of walk past, you kind of get the point. You walk past that, and there are all of these close-up pictures of these quite monstrous-looking creatures. I mean, one of them, which looks very much like the alien from the movie Alien, and these sort of strange-looking, almost spidery-looking or dangerous-looking, big teeth kind of fish or creatures, as you would say them, right? And these are real photographs, very close up.
Yep.
And then next to it, you have kind of a legend that shows just how large each of those creatures really is, and most of them are quite small.
Yeah.
So what is the point of this? What are you trying to do with this?
At the end of the day, as an instructor, and frankly, as just a human being, I love to challenge our conventional wisdoms and our preconceptions. And that exhibit, as you said, is this photos of lots of small sea creatures that look really terrible. But when you look at that scale bar, you realize they're no bigger than your pinky fingernail. And I love to tell folks about how creatures as fearsome looking as the anglerfish, right, which we've seen in many popular movies, hiding in the depths, lurking, waiting to jump on you. Their teeth, for example, aren't calcified. That means they're soft. And they're actually really slow-moving creatures. And they just sit and they try to catch the occasional shrimp. I mean, it's when you really understand what these animals are doing, you realize a lot of these fearsome attributes are just adaptations they have to living in this dark, quiescent world. They're just waiting to catch the one meal they might get in 3 months. Those big teeth aren't piercing anything. They're little cages, or some animals have this really horrific way of looking, but it's just an adaptation to living in this vast expanse of water. And so to me, I love challenging people's preconceived ideas, including my own, of what these organisms are, right? There's nothing monstrous about them.
Now, to be fair, there certainly are dangers in the ocean. There certainly are creatures that, a human should not interact with. There are creatures that have teeth that are calcified that will eat you.
There are some. There are.
But yet, they, I think one of the things that strikes me that you're doing with this exhibition is also challenging the notion of whether there's anything really wrong with that from their perspective.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Edgar. I mean, let's take sharks, which we have such a, bizarre relationship with, right? We love sharks and we are terrified of them. And when we hear a tale of a shark account, everybody's like, well, I'm not swimming in the ocean again. And I hear that so often. And at the end of the day, when we look really carefully as scientists at videos of shark attacks, often they're chasing small fish and a person happened to get in the way. And accidents happen and they're terrible. They're legitimately terrible. So to say that they're not is unfair and unfeeling, but to say that they're purposeful is I don't think that's true. And so that's our challenge as, sentient beings to think about, well, this shark is just sharking. That's what it does.
Shark's got to be a shark.
Exactly.
What about mythical creatures? I mean, we do touch on mythical creatures in the exhibition. You know, whether it be, like we said, you know, from the Odyssey, or whether it be Jaws himself. What is the allure of the kind of like mythical sea creature, the one that's out there somewhere but just has not yet been seen or discovered?
Yeah, you know, I think mythical creatures are paradoxical because they represent both a kind of otherness, something beyond the natural world, right? Something supernatural. And they also, I think, are a reflection of ourselves, of humankind's own monstrosity. We heap upon many of these sea monsters, these mythical sea monsters, our very worst attributes. You can go back and look at so many different traditions and see a sea monster that does these terrible things and think to yourself, you know, I knew a guy like that. You know, I mean, so they are in a way an opportunity to hold a mirror up to ourselves in a way that really underscores just how monstrous we can be, right? And we heap it upon these mythological creatures.
Another part of this exhibition is you have one wall, large wall, with all of these prints of old maps.
Yeah.
Maps that have images of sea creatures on them, or sort of imbued into them.
Yeah.
What's going on there?
Yeah, you know, that was a revelation to me a few years ago when I met a now friend and the author Chet Van Duzer, who wrote this wonderful book called Sea Monsters on Renaissance Maps. And in there, he does a deep dive, if you'll pardon the pun, into looking at these sea monsters. Some of them tell us about the philosophy of the time. 15th century philosophers who believed that there was an equal animal in the ocean for every animal on land. So they would paint depictions of sea pigs.
Wait.
Yeah.
They believed that if there was a land animal, then there was also a sea version of that animal.
Yeah. That was a kind of proto-scientific philosophy, right? And it's shown in some of these maps. Of course, other monsters are there as political statements or a kind of turf marking, if
How
you
so?
will. You know, you can imagine that, a person of influence commissions a map and says, you know, let's make sure that we convey a sense of danger in this part of the ocean because that's our fishing ground. You know, so these monsters on maps sometimes tell tales, but often they're also just fantastical. And they're put on there as decorative items. Maps were not as strictly utilitarian as they are today.
You know, I think about the notion of just mythical creatures in general, whether they be in the sea or somewhere else, right? You're talking about this period of time, for example, when you know, a proto-scientific thought was, well, maybe there's an equivalent of every land animal in the sea. We can look back at that now and kind of be like, that's crazy. That is so silly. But, you know, at the time, a few hundred years ago, as, you know, scientific discovery was really blossoming at such a huge pace, there were all kinds of things being discovered. There were pieces from ancient mythology that were being confirmed, and others that have sort of remained kind of in the realm of mythology, whether it be, you know, a unicorn, or, you know, whether it be some sea creature like a mermaid, which we now know probably doesn't exist.
Right.
Yet the sea creature one has seemed to kind of hold on. There are still these sort of sea creatures that maybe we still hope will be found.
Right.
And I wonder why you think that is.
Yeah, you know, I think there's two reasons, among probably more, but two that come to mind are, one is the fact is we're still finding creatures that we did not know about. Just 2010, a new species of whale was really discovered for the first time off New Zealand.
And a whale is not small.
That is not small, right? And so we've known about this thing for about 150 years, from partial jaws or a bit of a skeleton, but for the first time, there it was, you know, washed ashore. We are still discovering new creatures every time we go to sea. The second thing is, I think it gives people a bit of hope that the world isn't just what is before them, right? It's a lovely thought to think that there are things out there that are still a mystery that we haven't yet, you know, understood or commandeered or the like.
And as you point out, there's so much of the oceans that have yet to be explored that there still is mystery to be found there.
Oh, absolutely. You know, as a deep sea biologist, I remind people that 80% of our planet's living space is deep sea, you know, beyond the reach of sunlight. And everything else you think of, deserts, rainforests, even shallow water coral reefs, that's all 20%, you know, Boston, Miami, you name it.
One thing you also kind of, it seems, pose in this exhibition is the notion of, you were talking earlier about the fact that, these mythical sea creatures, Moby Dick, whatever it be, is sort of a reflection of humans. But you kind of also pose the question of whether or not, not to be too flippant about it, but are humans sometimes the real sea creatures when it comes to our interaction with waters in this day and age? Are we the monsters? Are we responsible for the destruction of our waterways, our oceans?
Yeah, I believe that, I'm an optimist at heart, man. And look, humans aren't monsters, but we can do monstrous things. And oftentimes we have these impacts on the world that we just don't really realize how problematic we're being. And then we do things that are also kind of terrifying. I would argue that the scariest sea monster in the ocean is a nuclear submarine.
Interesting. Yeah. How should we be thinking about interacting with the oceans as best as we can as humans with all of the things that we do in the modern world? Like, how should we be thinking about the best path forward?
Yeah, I love that many people in this world love and appreciate the ocean, and they really want to do right by it. The ocean is our biggest and most effective partner in keeping the planet, this lovely habitable place we want it to be. So a little bit of care, a little bit of nurturing goes a long way, and keep on imagining those sea monsters of the deep.
Do you have a favorite sea monster, or whether it's real or imagined, that's a little extra close to your heart?
I can't do that, bud. I can't. They're all amazing, but I encourage people to look at the diversity of sea monsters in world traditions. It's lovely.
You just heard our conversation with Peter Girguis, a Harvard professor of organic and evolutionary biology. It originally aired on The Culture Show. He's the guest curator of the exhibition Sea Monsters, Wonders of Nature and Imagination. That's at the Harvard Museum of Natural History through late June. Remember, we always want to hear your curiosity questions. We'll do our best to report out answers that put to rest the things you've been wondering about. You can use the submission form at gbh.org or leave us a voice memo at 877-301-8970. And stay with us to hear your questions answered on the air. That, of course, is for a future date because that is it for us for now. The Curiosity Desk is produced by Aidan Connolly, Rachel Armani, Olivia Corcio, Hannah Loss, and Nicole Garcia. Patty Daniels is the Nessie in our Loch Ness. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Special thanks to Andrew Massawa. You can subscribe to our podcast so you never miss a show, and join us live right back here in 23 short hours on GBH 89.7 and streaming on YouTube. Until then, I'm Edgar B. Herwick III. Stay curious out there.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Seasons 4, the outdoor living store in Lexington, featuring over 100 styles of outdoor furniture delivered throughout New England, plus a wide selection of plants, statuary, and garden accessories. April event in progress. Seasons4.com. Slow it down. Take 5 and take in some jazz. Turn your room into a late-night jazz club with GBH